Chapter 232. Strange patient Wu Jinyan held her hand and shook her head seriously. Ingxue, you can't do this. One can't take so much money from you. When Thousand Jiao Pavilion is running smoothly, even a 10% share is not a small amount. Su Ingxue let go of her hand and smiled. 10% isn't a small amount, so 50% is a lot for me. Besides, one don't know how to do business. Manager Qi is the one running the clinic, and am only responsible for treating patients. Manager Qi is already exhausted from running a clinic, let alone you, sister. Besides, Thousand Jiao Pavilion isn't an ordinary shop. With you there, it's still my eyes, isn't it? Wu Jinyan thought about it for a moment. Su Ingxue was right. The Thousand Jiao Pavilion, being a gathering place for women, could indeed be her eyes, helping to overcome many difficulties. With this understanding, Wu Jinyan accepted the adjusted profit-sharing ratio without objections. Perhaps to make her feel at ease, Su Ingxue added, in the early stages of my investment, there's still a portion for my brother. Although we're siblings, we still need to keep accounts straight. 111 allocate my brother's share to your account. You and your husband can figure it out. They'll teach you a lesson. Wu Jinyan, graceful and charming, felt both embarrassed and shy dealing with Su Yingxi's playful banter. She really wanted to scold her properly. Lin Cixi jumped between the two of them, and the three girls laughed and played for quite a while. However, Wu Jinyan's reminder did weigh on Su Yingxi's mind. Since Lu Shulan had gone to Wu Jinyan's Thousand Jiao Pavilion, it didn't make sense for her not to come to Su Yingxi's clinic. However, what methods would she use? The next morning, shortly after the clinic opened, all the patients ran out. Su Ingxue heard the commotion and came out. Manager Qi covered his mouth and nose and stopped her. Miss, it's too smelly. You'd better not go. Dr. Qin has already gone to see the patient. What kind of patients could cause this? Su Ingxue frowned. The patient has ulcers all over the body, continuous vomiting, and a foul smell. The odor is just too overwhelming. Miss, don't get affected by it. Manager Qi pushed Su Ingxue into her treatment room again, afraid that she might get nauseated. However, Su Ingxue didn't vomit. He found it somewhat unbearable and ended up retching in the backyard. As the owner of the clinic, Su Ingxue still wanted to take a look. Before she reached the door of treatment room number 1, she sensed a repugnant smell. She subconsciously covered her mouth and nose. The smell was really unbearable. She stood at the door and looked. Dr. Qin was applying medicine to the patient, but the patient kept vomiting. Dr. Qin, with many years of medical experience, couldn't help but show a pained expression. Su Ingxue covered her mouth and nose and went out to make a few masks. She threaded fine strings through a cotton cloth, creating 2 ear loops for the masks to hand on the face and block some of the smells. This was something she had seen in her mother's letter, along with another medical item called gloves. After she had prepared everything, she got someone to send it to Qin Ming. When Qin Ming's apprentice came back and told her, Dr. Qin was on the verge of tears, thanking her profusely. Su Ingxue smiled at first, but when she asked Manager Qi about the patient's condition, her smile faded. This person seems to have some unknown disease. As soon as he came in, he vomited in the hall. His entire body was covered in rashes and pustules, and some were festering on the skin, forming patches of ulcers. It looked disgusting, but the worst part was that he kept vomiting, and the vomit was extremely foul-smelling. Dr. Qin applied some ointment and administered medicinal soup to him, and now he's bathing and changing clothes. Follow current novels on Top Novel Fool. Com. Chapter 233. Infected, who is he? Did you register his name and address? Su Ingxue asked with a frown. He's a beggar outside the city, named Lai San. Sigh, if he hadn't given me a silver ingot as a consultation fee, one wouldn't have dared to let him stay in the clinic. Manager Qi felt regret in his heart. He should have been more careful back then. But now, since the man had the consultation fee, he couldn't deny him medical attention. A beggar from outside the city struggling even for basic necessities, how could he afford medical treatment? And why would he come straight to our clinic? Go and get Dr. Qin. Su Ingxue immediately became vigilant. Manager Qi hurriedly called Qin Ming over. Qin Ming had changed into a brown robe, was in his 40s, with many years of medical experience. He was an old doctor who had worked at Tongchang Medical Center for many years. Su Yingxue asked him, "Dr. Qin, your medical skills are superb. Can you determine the illness of Lai San? It's like scabies, severe inflammation. That's why the infection has spread all over his body. Beggars like them often neglect hygiene, so their bodies fester with pus. With their nomadic lifestyle and frequent nausea and vomiting, it's quite normal. It's not difficult to treat, but it requires daily dressing changes and careful care," Qin Ming said truthfully. Su Yingxue nodded. "In that case, Dr. Qin, it'll trouble you to personally take care of him for the next few days. Don't let others handle it. Be cautious about any changes in his condition. Dr. Qin, please observe him closely at all times. I'm afraid his illness might not be that simple." Qin Ming agreed. "I understand. Don't worry, Mississippi." In order to treat Lai San, Qin Ming didn't go home for the past 2 days and stayed in the clinic. Su Yingxue often found herself engrossed in her mother's medical books until it was dark. When night fell, she simply slept in the study. However, with Ziwei around, she never felt cold at night. When she woke up during the day, she would find herself covered with a blanket. Su Yingxue was about to call Ziwei to go to the bun shop in the east of the city with her and have a sumptuous breakfast when she heard Manager Chi's voice from the front yard. "Miss, something bad has happened. Lai San's disease was contagious. Dr. Qin and the others were infected." "What?" Su Yingxue hurriedly rushed out. Fortunately, Manager Chi was quick-witted and closed the door of the clinic. He arranged for the other patients to be transferred to the branch clinic in the west of the city. At this moment, the medical hall was filled with a strong stench. Qin Ming and his 2 apprentices were vomiting at this moment. Their faces and hands were swollen with pustules, especially Qin Ming. Yellow fluid was flowing out of the pustules on his hands. Su Yingxue tried to approach, but Manager Chi blocked her with his back facing her. "Miss, don't go. This disease is too severe when it breaks out. I'm feeling a bit itchy now, and am afraid I might have caught the disease too." Su Yingxue's eyes widened as she saw Manager Chi scratching his hand. Soon, the back of his hand broke open, oozing a mixture of blood and yellow fluid. "Miss, I was careless. This disease is contagious, and the clinic is in big trouble." Qin Ming regretted deeply. He had been careless and thought that it was just a minor ailment carried by the beggar, not realizing it was a type of contagious disease. "Manager Chi, instruct everyone in the clinic who has been in contact with you, Dr. Qin, and me to gather in the treatment room. Those who haven't been in contact, quickly send them home and ask them to bring some mugwort, wash their bodies, boil it, take it, and stay at home without coming out." Manager Chi hurriedly wanted to go over, but Su Yingxue gave him a mask to put on. "Remember, don't let them panic." Manager Chi nodded. "Yes, miss. Follow current novels on Top Novel Fool. Com." Chapter 234. Deadly Plague. Su Yingxue put on a mask and gloves and approached Qin Ming. Qin Ming retreated in fear. "Miss, you shouldn't do this. You better leave quickly. If the disease spreads," Su Yingxue calmly walked up to him. "I'm a doctor. If I'm afraid, how can I treat patients?" Qin Ming was afraid of implicating her. Her calm appearance gave people a sense of security. He reluctantly allowed Su Yingxue to examine him. Su Yingxue pulled up Qin Ming's sleeve and observed that the pustules and scares on his body were spreading rapidly, and the symptoms of nausea and vomiting were gradually intensifying. Su Yingxue asked Qin Ming, "When you treated Lai San, how did you diagnose him?" Speaking of this, Qin Ming's eyes were filled with remorse at that time. Seeing him, considering he was a beggar and vomiting continuously, "I thought he had scabies and gastrointestinal problems. I didn't pulse him but directly used scabies ointment. However, when one came back today to pulse him, I found myself itching and in pain all over. The same goes for my apprentice." Su Yingxue glanced at Qin Ming's apprentices. They both exhibited the same symptoms as Qin Ming, and it seemed more severe for them. One of the apprentices said, "Yesterday, one was the one who applied medicine and cleaned clothes for Lai San, with direct contact. So I am in worse condition than master and junior brother." Qin Ming looked at his body covered in pustules and scars. He felt guilty. He felt even more sorry for Su Yingxue. After practicing medicine for so many years, he never expected to be careless at times. Su Yingxue wore a mask as she pondered. To find out the root cause, I still have to treat Lai San. Miss, this is not allowed. Let me go. Anyway, I have contacted the disease. This time, they'll definitely figure it out. Miss, your health is precious. If anything happens to you, our clinic will collapse. If one can't diagnose this disease, even if one die from it, it's my fate. Qin Ming stopped Su Yingxue. Su Yingxue knew that his worries were reasonable, so she followed him to the treatment room. After discovering that Lai San had an infectious disease, Manager Qi isolated him in the same treatment room as before. Su Yingxue was at the door, and Qin Ming personally went up to take Lai San's pulse. He was already a doctor with superb medical skills. Usually, he would only need to take 15 pulses to determine the result. Su Yingxue saw that he had taken 30 pulses on both hands, and her brows furrowed even more tightly. After Qin Ming checked his pulse, Lai San vomited again. The stench of vomit was overwhelming. After he got Lai San to lie down and rest, he came out trembling. His lips were pale as he told Su Yingxue, Miss, this is that deadly plague from 10 years ago. The deadly plague? This word existed in Su Yingxue's mind. 10 years ago, she was still a child, but she remembered that in Yi City, thousands of miles away, almost one-third of the city's population died due to a deadly plague. The imperial court had sent many imperial physicians to treat it, but it was to no avail. Later, the renowned poison doctor Saint Ruan from the martial world intervened and managed to quell the disaster. Now, 10 years had passed, and this deadly plague had unexpectedly appeared in her clinic. Su Yingxue brought Qin Ming out and instructed him to bathe and change clothes using mugwort. He also drank some mugwort soup and changed his mask and gloves before returning to her to provide information. Qin Ming said, Back then, I went to Yi City to witness this calamity and came into contact with 1 or 2 patients. Their initial symptoms were like Lai San's. They were covered in pustules, oozing blood and pus, and kept vomiting. However, the further it progressed, the more miserable the condition of the patients became. Chapter 235. Lu Shulan's viciousness. The deadly plague was vicious in that it corroded from the inside out. The skin on the surface of the body turned into pus and blood inch by inch. The more he vomited, the more his internal organs gradually turned into pus and blood. This was the first time Su Yingxue had heard of such a shocking symptom. Do you still remember what method the poison doctor used to treat the patient who had the deadly plague? Qin Ailing shook his head disappointed. The poison doctor is eccentric and elusive. Very few people have seen him, so how would they know what method he used? Su Yingxue thought of the symptoms and thought for a while. One can't think of a way to treat him, but we can't afford to do nothing. Let's first think of a way to protect the internal organs of the infected individuals. Then, we'll use some ointment to treat the scars. We'll stabilize them first and see how we can treat them next. Qin Ming sighed. It can only be done this way. The appearance of this disease in Jiangdu City will definitely cause panic. If the news of our clinic spreads, everyone in the clinic will be doomed. Don't be so pessimistic. This clinic was opened by me, Su Yingxue. If anyone is to die, it will be me first. As long as I'm alive, you all won't die. Su Yingxue's determined gaze gave Qin Ming courage. As an experienced doctor, Qin Ming naturally knew how to medicate himself. During this period, he and his apprentices continued to take care of Lai San. Su Yingxue would personally take care of Manager Qi and observe his condition. When Su Yingxue applied medicine for Manager Qi, Manager Qi's eyes were red. Miss, don't bother about me. I'm already so old, and life and death don't matter much. As long as you're still alive, bring old master's belongings and return to the Marquis Manor. Burn this place with a fire. You can still manage that branch in the west of the city. Su Yingxue smiled. Both are under Tongchang Medical Center's brand. If we burn down this place, would there still be people going to the clinic in the west of the city? The imperial court wouldn't agree to it for now. Moreover, do you think that one can run away after returning to the Marquis Manor? Most likely, 111 be caught and brought back, and the clinic will be burned down along with it. Manager Chi realized the logic in her words. No matter what, Su Yingxue couldn't escape. Once he thought it through, he began to wipe his tears. Sigh, I'm really useless. I couldn't take good care of you for old master, and even let you die with us. Who said I'm going to die? Do you really not trust your boss, me? My mother is no longer around, so I can't cure this illness? Su Yingxue raised her eyebrows. Miss, you can definitely cure it. You are the old master's daughter. Manager Chi cried while clenching his teeth to strengthen his confidence. Su Yingxue's originally tense nerves were suddenly amused by him. Manager Chi went out to rest and arranged for the people who were still locked up in the clinic to check their symptoms with Qin Ming. Su Yingxue had originally planned to flip through the medical books to see if her mother had left any records. However, she found nothing. As she lay on the chair and combed through the entire matter, the traces of conspiracy connected in her mind. Wu Jinyin had previously warned her that Lu Shulan had already probed her. Following that, Lai San, the beggar, came to her clinic. He was afraid that they wouldn't take him in, so he came in when the clinic opened and offered a silver coin. Su Yingxue would never believe that this matter was controlled by no one. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Lu Shulan, this woman who had never entered the Marquis Manor, but had always been like a poisonous snake, entrenched outside the Marquis Manor's door. Chapter 236. Fire the medical center. Perhaps she had real skills, but how did she manage to infect Lai San with the terrifying infectious disease that haunted people 10 years ago? In the Hall of Diligent Government, Chu Mingyuan listened as Liang Jin reported the events at Su Yingxue's clinic. His thick black brows furrowed together like looming peaks. Minister Liang, is it true that there is an infectious disease in Su Yingxue's clinic? Liang Jin held the jade board in his hand, and his expression was solemn. I received a confidential report and sent someone to Tongchang Medical Center to investigate. The door of the medical center was tightly shut. Su Yingxue had already dismissed some of the people in the medical center and ordered them to burn incense with mugwort. They were also shut at home and were not allowed to go out. There was another group of people in Tongchang Medical Center. According to those who went to the clinic that day, Tongchang Medical Center had treated a beggar covered in pus and wounds that day. The symptoms of that person were exactly the same as the deadly plague in Yi City 10 years ago. The words deadly plague were like a clap of thunder that exploded in the court. Deadly plague? This was a deadly infectious disease. How can it appear in Jiangdu City? Your Majesty, please quickly isolate the people in Tongchang Medical Center. Don't let them spread the disease. This deadly plague can take lives. Su Yingxue's so-called medical center is nothing but a Yamas palace. The courtiers were in a state of anxiety and discussing animatedly. Su Dingheng, who was standing in the court, became the target of everyone's attacks. He was pierced like a sieve by the gazes of the civil officials and generals. However, he couldn't say a word. He could only lower his head and curse silently. This troublesome, rebellious daughter. I should strangle her to death as soon as possible. She had caused him so much trouble. Father, the plan now is to think about how to treat this deadly plague. If it can't be treated, it won't be too late to punish the people from Tongchang Medical Center, Chu Qingye suggested. He was the prince that Chu Mingyuan valued the most. Chu Mingyuan was not satisfied with his answer. The deadly plague from 10 years ago was cured by the poison doctor, Saint Ruan. Do you know where he is now? Chu Qingye choked. I don't know. However, he remembered that it was Chu Yihan who had invited the poison doctor to cure the disease in Yi City back then. If this matter was handed over to Chu Yihan, he could also handle it well. However, he didn't want to take credit for Chu Yihan. Chu Jinling wasn't as petty as him. He shouted bluntly, Imperial Father, Ninth Imperial Uncle knows. 10 years ago, he was the one who found the poison doctor and resolved Yi City's crisis. Chu Mingyuan didn't blame Chu Jinling for being straightforward. It was because he didn't want his ninth brother to show his face again. 10 years ago, he had already established his status as an immortal in the hearts of the people. If he were to find the poison doctor again this time, he would gain even more popular support. How could he maintain his imperial position? Liang Jin also knew about this, so he secretly looked at Chu Yihan, hoping that this master would give him some reaction. However, Chu Yihan was dressed in a moon-white brocade robe and held a jade pendant in his hand. He stood there as handsome as a statue. His clear stance was evident. It's none of my business, and I won't get involved. Chu Mingyuan waved his sleeves coldly. The problem originated from Tongchang Medical Center. If we want to stop the deadly plague from spreading, burn Tongchang Medical Center. The court was in an uproar. Most of the people supported Chu Mingyuan's decision, as people are inherently selfish. What was wrong with sacrificing others in exchange for the peace of their own family? Only a few upright courtiers whispered, "Isn't it too cruel to burn down the medical center without providing any treatment?" Yeah, there are still lives inside. That Dr. Su is a rare female doctor. She even treated my wife's illness. She treated my daughter's illness too. Chapter 237. Chu Yihan's responsibility. Chu Yihan, who had been silent all along, spoke up at this moment. Burning down the medical center is not only cruel but also ruthless, absurd to the extreme. Imperial uncle, how dare you be so insolent? You dare to say that father is ruthless? Chu Chengye's eyes spewed anger. I haven't spoken wrongly. Chu Yihan's tone remained calm, but his frosty face made it hard for people to look at him directly. If I am ruthless, ninth brother, what's your suggestion? Should I send imperial physicians to Tongchang Medical Center? Or should I send people to find the poison doctor, Saint Ruan, to resolve this disaster and save Su Yingxue? Chu Mingyuan deliberately mentioned Su Yingxue's name to poke Chu Yihan's heart. Chu Yihan tightened his grip on the jade pendant. No one could see that under his fingers was the word snow carved on the jade pendant. I will be responsible for finding the poison doctor and saving the people from Tongchang Medical Center. If anything goes wrong, I'll bear the responsibility. With these words, Chu Yihan left the Hall of Diligent Government. The faces of the officials behind him displayed a variety of emotions. Even Chu Mingyuan gritted his teeth in anger. The moment he left, Chu Mingyuan angrily ordered the courtiers to go home. Chu Jinling jogged behind him. Imperial uncle, did you really go against father? One heard mother say that this deadly plague is quite scary. At that time, someone in the Shao family contracted the disease and didn't escape this calamity. What your father wants is not Tongchang Medical Center's life, but my life. Chu Yihan sneered. Chu Jinling smacked his lips awkwardly. He thought, why was it so complicated? He was planning to leave the palace and return to the bookstore and write books, but before he could take a few steps, he was dragged back by noble consort Shao's people. Noble consort Shao kept him by her side, saying that until the deadly plague was quelled, he was not allowed to leave her sight. Chu Chengye was also brought back by his mother. Chu Chengye lost his temper in the Empress Palace. Mother, this matter is extremely serious. I can't just stand by and do nothing. I must leave the palace and check the situation at Tongchang Medical Center. Have you gone mad? That's the deadly plague. Don't you care about your life? Do you not care about your mother's life? The Empress angrily smashed a cup of tea, and tears were about to fall. Her eldest son, Chu Xiuwen, was now half-crippled. Chu Chengye was her only son who was still intact. There's no way she would let him go to his death. Mother, I will be careful. That deadly plague may not be that severe. I want to retrieve the situation for father. Otherwise, the credit will fall to Imperial Uncle again. Chu Chengye looked anxious. A series of rolling sounds came from outside the hall, and Chu Xiuwen was pushed in. His legs were weak and his face was pale. He leaned on the wheelchair and lectured Chu Chengye. Are you afraid that Chu Yihan will get the credit? You're probably worried about Su Yingxue's life and want to leave the palace to take care of her. Chu Chengye retorted sternly. I don't. How is she worthy of my care? How? Is she not already in your heart? Ever since I schemed against her, you, my so-called brother, have never called me brother again. In the end, you're still feeling indignant for Su Yingxue. Chu Xiuwen was weak. After shouting, he began to cough. You brought this upon yourself. Chu Chengye's face darkened. If Chu Xiuan hadn't insisted on tarnishing Su Yingshi's innocence last time, how could he have fallen into her trap? Are you a man with principles? Even if Su Yingxue dies now, you won't be able to get her heart. She had long since hooked up with Imperial Uncle and had no idea how she could enjoy herself under him every night. You fool, you're still thinking for her. Chapter 238 I will accompany you in the burial. Chu Chengye was so angry that he wanted to retort. He wanted to throw a tantrum at Chu Xiuan and argue with him, saying that Su Yingxue didn't enjoy herself under Chu Yihan. But he couldn't say these words, because even he himself wasn't sure. Chu Yihan was such a cold and heartless person. He would take the blame for the Tongchang Medical Center incident on himself and bear the responsibility. It was all for Su Yingxue. Chu Chengye went to the side hall sullenly. He didn't want to face his third brother and mother, and even more, he didn't want to face. Chu Yihan was more willing to part with Su Yingxue than he was to Su Yingxue. Su Yingxue knew that this matter would definitely cause a stir in the imperial court, but she didn't expect that the person who came was actually Chu Yihan. Chu Yihan stood at the door with his soldiers and called out to her, Su Yingxue, Your Highness, I'm here. Hearing Su Yingshi's voice, the haze in Chu Yihan's heart dissipated a little. He stepped forward and was about to walk to the door of the clinic when Liang Jin's eyes widened. Your Highness, it's dangerous. It's better to stay further away. He was worried that Chu Yihan might also contract the illness. Chu Yihan didn't heed his advice. He stood at the door until he could clearly see the silhouette of Su Yingxue on the doorframe. He reached out and pressed on the doorframe where her head was. He asked gently, Are you all right? With me here, there's no need to be afraid. Su Yingshi's heart was filled with warmth. Your Highness, don't worry. I'm safe and sound. I'm not infected. Sister. Su Hao also rushed out of the military camp. He was stopped by Liang Jin. Young general, don't get close. You hold a crucial position, and your safety is connected to the well-being of many soldiers in the army. Please step back, step back. Liang Jin couldn't push Su Hao alone, so he called many palace guards to help, finally pushing Su Hao a few steps back. Su Yingxue heard Su Hao's voice and answered him loudly, Brother. Don't worry. It'll be fine. How can it be fine? This deadly plague is very dangerous. Sister, why are you? Su Hao gritted his teeth. A man of 7 feet, usually composed, couldn't help but turn red ice at this moment. If his sister died in this disaster, how could he face his grandfather? How could he have the face to meet his deceased mother? He was her older brother. He should be inside protecting her. Brother, coming in won't help. You're not a doctor who doesn't know how to treat illnesses, but I do. I promise that one will definitely cure the patients. Su Yingxue shouted at Su Hao. The more she said this, the more uncertain she felt, because she still hadn't figured out how to cure this deadly plague. Your Highness, can you find the poison doctor? Su Yingshi's eyes were filled with hope. Chu Yihan didn't conceal the truth from her. I've sent people to look for him, but the chances aren't high. He's always been homeless. Su Yingxue smiled bitterly. Is that so? That means that this calamity is destined to happen to me. Su Yingxue, listen up. One guarantee in front of my imperial brother that if you can cure this illness, one will live in peace with you. If you can't cure it, my imperial brother will burn down the medical center, and I will accompany you in the burial. Chu Yihan's voice was very soft, but when it reached Su Yingshi's ears, every word was like a huge rock smashing into her heart. What? How can it be like this? How can the emperor treat you like this? You. Quickly go and tell the emperor. I can burn down the clinic, but one don't want you to die with me. Su Yingshi's eyes turned red. How could she let Chu Yihan die with her? He was the revered god of war of the great Qing dynasty. How could he be ruined by her? I volunteered for this. Su Yingxue, if you die, there is no point in me standing in the imperial court. Chu Yihan's fingers traced her silhouette on the door frame. Chapter 239. Last order. His voice was deep and sexy, like aged wine in a hidden alley. From now on, they'll be guarding you outside. Anytime you speak up, they'll be there. I can give you anything you need. I will keep searching for Saint Ruan for you. You don't have to be afraid. There was no need to be afraid. How much must he love her to make such a promise at a time like this? Su Yingxue, who was a bit disheartened, wiped away her tears. Su Yingxue, will never be afraid. Your Highness, if you want to die with me, one won't give you the chance. Humph. Chu Yihan smiled when he heard her arrogant tone. He knew that the little girl who dared to touch his face and offer herself to him at the age of 3 would never be afraid today. Su Yingxue kept observing Qinming's symptoms and tried different medicines for them. However, no matter what kind of antidote she formulated, their conditions improved one day only to worsen the next, day after day. 3 days had passed. Su Yingxue even locked herself in her mother's study. Yes, she had locked herself from the inside, to prevent Ziwei Tail from breaking through the door. However, just as she was engrossed in her book, a powerful surge of air smashed into the room along with the debris of the door. Su Yingxue looked at Ziwei, who stood at the door with a knife in his hand, and said seriously, "Stay there. Don't move." Ziwei didn't budge. "Let me protect you. Stand there and don't move. Stay away from me is protecting me. This disease is so severe. Just because I'm not showing any symptoms doesn't mean I'm not infected. You're not allowed to come near me. Step back." Su Yingxue had always been gentle to him, but this time, she berated him sternly. She was as serious as she could be. Ziwei didn't get close, but he also refused to step back. His eyes were stubborn. "I want to stay with you. What's the use of you accompanying me now? Can you cure patients for me? If one infect you, it will only add to an innocent life." Su Yingxue berated him sternly, finally making him take a step back. However, he quickly returned to his original position. His voice was not as cold as usual. There was a hint of frustration. "Can one help you with anything?" Su Yingxue blurted out. She wanted him to stay as far away as possible. That would be the greatest help he could offer her. However, it was better to let him do some serious business than to send him away. "Go to Yaoguang Garden and help me keep an eye on Lu Shulan. In these days that I haven't left the medical center, keep an eye on her. I want to know her words, actions, and the places she usually goes. When I leave the medical center, report all these things to me in detail, got it?" Ziwei nodded solemnly. Got it. He would definitely follow her orders and keep an eye on Lu Shulan. But he dared not leave. The purple hue at the end of his eyes became even deeper. Under the moonlight, it sparkled. There was even a trace of trembling. That's right. He was afraid. He had been raised as a weapon since he was young. He had never dared to have human feelings, let alone so many emotions. But now, he had feelings and emotions. He was worried about Su Yingxue. He was afraid once he left, he might never see her again. Ziwei 111 give you one last order. If I can't leave the medical center, you have to live well in the future. Find a doctor to heal your body. Live as long as you can. If you live one day less, even if you see me in Yama's palace, I won't be your master anymore. Su Yingxue's eyes were filled with beautiful wishes. Ziwei's throat was choked with sobs. He struggled to make a sound. Yes, master. Chapter 240. Hong Lian provoked watching Ziwei leave. Su Yingxue felt a twinge of reluctance, but also a heavy burden lifted. Regardless of whether she could cure the plague this time, at least she wouldn't implicate Ziwei. She had always hoped that he could live like a normal person. Ha ha ha. What a good show of affection so entwined. Hong Lian's bold laughter came from outside the door, sharply contrasting with the silent night. Unlike the fear of Ziwei contracting the disease just a moment ago, Su Yingxue stepped out and approached Hong Lian. Pavilion Master Hong Lian, did you come for a stroll to my place at this late hour? You're so free. With every word she said, she took a step closer to Hong Lian. She didn't bring assassin number 19 with her today, and her eyes that were blinded by her poison had also recovered their sight. Her long hair fluttered in the moonlight, and her eyes were full of pride. As someone nearing death, of course, one have to take a few more glances at you. Otherwise, when your body starts to decay and pus, not even the features can be distinguished. That would be quite unappetizing. Su Yingxue stood in front of Hong Lian. A seductive smile blossomed on her beautiful face. Pavilion Master Hong Lian, how do you conclude that I'm nearing death? You can't cure the deadly plague. Hong Lian inched closer to her, her eyes filled with cold and mockery. She looked down on her with pride. It was as if she was the blazing sun, and she, Su Yingxue, was just a dying cicada after a summer. However, Su Yingshue's smile became even brighter. You clearly know that I can't cure the deadly plague, yet you come so close without any fear. Pavilion Master Hong Lian, I'm afraid that this deadly plague was your doing, right? Hong Lian's eyes gleamed sharply as she grabbed Su Yingshue's neck. Are you deliberately testing me? Su Yingxue didn't resist, but the smile on her lips became even more ethereal. Hong Lian, I've been in the medical center for so long. My manager and doctor have all been infected with the deadly plague, and you still dare to touch me. It seems that not only is the deadly plague you're doing, but even the poison doctor, Saint Ruan, is also under your control, right? After Su Yingxue finished speaking slowly, she grabbed Hong Lian's hand with her right hand and pulled her in front of her. The two women looked at each other, and their eyes radiated crimson murderous intent. Su Yingxue, as death approaches, savor these last moments. Hong Lian shook off her hand and retreated with a cold smile. You can scheme against me, but aren't you the one who had always been infatuated with His Highness? Don't you know that this time he vouched for me? If something happens to me, he won't be blameless. Su Yingshue's eyes were profound, with a probing glint. Are you even worthy of being mentioned in the same breath as His Highness? His Highness commands tens of thousands of troops, and even the Emperor dares not reprimand him. As for you, even if His Highness is implicated by you this time, the Silver Moon Pavilion will surely present a brilliant plan to ensure His Highness' safe retreat. What you call a safe retreat is to have the poison doctor, Saint Ruan, intervene after my death and cure the deadly plague? Su Yingxue flipped her hair, her eyes filled with confidence. Su Yingxue, go ahead and flaunt your abilities. When you're dead, they'll definitely grind your corpse to ashes. Hong Lian said, and then swiftly left. As she watched her leave, Su Yingxue secretly smirked. She really had to thank this woman who came to see her make a fool of herself. The mysteries in her mind suddenly unraveled. Lu Shulan, Silver Moon Pavilion, Deadly Plague. Su Yingxue was excited for a moment, but the gleam in her eyes quickly faded. What's the use of unraveling all this? If she couldn't cure the deadly plague, she wouldn't be able to escape either. Chapter 241. The antidote to fight poison with poison. However, Hong Lian's words made her feel more at ease. Chui Han wouldn't lose his life because of this. As for the mention of being buried together, Su Yingxue pressed her hand against her chest. She kept these words in her heart, a warmth to console herself. Another night passed, and Qin Ming and the others gradually showed signs of physical exhaustion. His eldest disciple was the first to cough up blood, and he already had some symptoms of fainting. Manager Qi came to tell her weakly, "Miss, Lai San is in critical condition. This time, I'm afraid we're really in trouble. Miss, you haven't contracted the disease yet. It's better to leave quickly. If you survive, there's still a glimmer of hope for our medical center and the old master." In this short period of time, it was normal for no one to be able to cure this deadly plague. It would be abnormal if someone did. Su Yingxue had been busy for a few days and felt a little dizzy. She wore a mask and shook her head hard. I said it before, we live or die together. She would never abandon her people and the medical center and run away. She went to Lai San's treatment room. Although she cleaned him up every day, the things he vomited became increasingly smelly. The pervasive smell of pus and blood, as the infection spread all over his body, made it unbearable to approach. His hands were black, but he kept reaching forward. He said in a hoarse voice, "Save. Save me, one don't want to die." Su Yingxue wore gloves, administered medicinal soup, and applied ointment to him. She said calmly, "Don't worry, as long as I'm alive, I won't allow anyone to die." She wasn't the poison doctor, Saint Ruan, but that didn't mean she couldn't develop the antidote that Saint Ruan had developed. As night fell, the lights outside the medical center remained on. Liang Jing dispatched people to seal the road and stationed a heavy guard, but he could not persuade the immovable Chu Yihan, no matter what. Chu Yihan guarded this place day and night without moving a single step, until that beautiful figure appeared on the doorframe. He took a step forward and placed his hand on the doorframe. His voice was low. Su Yingxue, are you okay? I'm still here. Your Highness, I haven't been infected so far, probably because the heavens are looking out for me. Please tell my brother not to worry. Su Yingxue's voice was gentle. Chu Yihan nodded. Okay, Your Highness, is it that Saint Ruan couldn't be found? Su Yingxue asked. Chu Yihan's eyes darkened. I've already ordered the Silver Moon Pavilion to search for him. We'll definitely find him. Su Yingxue laughed secretly. Chu Yihan probably didn't know that Hong Lian had come to see her. His relationship with the Silver Moon Pavilion was truly extraordinary. However, this wasn't what she wanted to know. She asked Chu Yihan, does Your Highness understand Saint Ruan's personality? He's reclusive, eccentric, and likes to act young. Chu Yihan wouldn't have used those words if he wasn't describing Saint Ruan. Su Yingxue could imagine the look of disgust on Chu Yihan's face. An old man who likes to act young. The image of an old naughty child immediately appeared in Su Yingxue's mind. He is known as the poison doctor. Does he often use the method of fighting poison with poison? Yes, and as he has grown older, he only relies on fighting poison with poison. Chu Yihan seemed particularly disdainful of the fact that Saint Ruan was getting older. Su Yingxue understood what was going on. She pursed her lips and chuckled. Your Highness, don't know how Saint Ruan concocted the medicine, but now I'm going to give it a try. After she finished speaking, she turned around and was about to leave. Wait, Chu Yihan called out to her. Tell me when you've concocted the medicine. Sure. Su Yingxue agreed readily. She locked herself in the treatment room for a day and a night. Using what she had learned and what was recorded in her mother's letter, she made a bowl of thick poison soup with the venom of the beetle, scorpion juice, and other poisons. Chapter 242. Who would test the medicine? The poison had a purplish hue, looking ominous, not to mention the shuddering taste when consumed. But Su Yingxue thought about how Chu Yihan described Saint Ruan. The older he got, the more he relied on poisons. This deadly plague was a contagious poison. If he used poison to counteract it, it might just kill the plague. Yet, she couldn't be certain of the potency of this concoction. Manager Chi looked at the poison she had concocted and trembled. Miss, are you really going to fight poison with poison? Su Yingxue looked at the bowl of poison that she had concocted and smiled bitterly. Do you have a better idea? Well, why don't we let the doctor in the clinic study it for a few more days? With Ninth Prince outside as our guarantor, Miss doesn't have to be so anxious. Although Manager Chi didn't explicitly say that he didn't explicitly express doubt about Su Yingxue, he was deeply concerned about the toxicity of the medicine. It would be great if it could be cured, but if it couldn't, you don't have to worry. I won't let you test the medicine. Su Yingxue reassured him with a smile, her mind already calculating the possibilities as she looked at the antidote she had prepared. Manager Chi saw her calm expression and thought, Lai San is already on the brink of death, so letting him try the medicine wouldn't hurt. If Miss decides so, they'll bring this medicine to him. Su Yingxue didn't answer him. Instead, she personally carried the medicine to Lai San's treatment room. As a beggar, he had never seen much of the world. Su Yingxue was as beautiful as a fairy and had taken care of him for so long. Every time she came, Lai San felt like he had seen the hope of life. His filthy face broke into a smile. Fairy, fairy. However, when he saw that the medicine in Su Yingxue's hand was purple-black in color and had a very strong smell, the fear of death made him subconsciously shrink back into the bed. It's poisonous. This medicine was poisonous. What are you doing? One don't want to die. Of course, you don't want to die. Who in this world wants to die? Su Yingxue didn't tell Manager Chi the truth. Manager Chi had always hated Lai San for putting them in this predicament and didn't treat him well. Lai San was so scared that he curled up in the corner of the bed and cried, I was wrong. I won't be greedy anymore. One want to live. One want to live. Su Yingxue hadn't questioned Lai San for the past few days. Firstly, because his condition was critical, and secondly, because he was an inconspicuous beggar who likely wouldn't have anything valuable to say. However, since he had said it, Su Yingxue couldn't help but ask, "Did someone give you money to come to my clinic?" "Yes, yes. It's a lot of silver coins." Lai San's eyes gleamed. He had taken 2 stacks of silver coins, and there was another stack hidden in a soil jar under a tree outside the city. He originally thought that after finishing this task, he could go back and enjoy a few hearty meals. Little did he know that as soon as he entered this clinic, he almost died here. "Who gave you the money? Who is trying to harm the clinic?" Manager Chi was so agitated that he wanted to beat Lai San up. "No, I don't know." Lai San's eyes were vacant, and his language was limited. All he could say was that the person who gave him the money seemed like a respectable, wealthy individual. Such people were abundant in Jiangdu City. Manager Chi was confused, but Su Yingxue had long understood. She came over to check on Lai San's condition. Seeing that Lai San was so terrified, she comforted him. "Don't worry. One won't let you drink this medicine. They'll only use it to treat you if it proves effective after testing." "Miss, if you don't let him test the medicine, who do you want to test the medicine with?" Manager Chi's heart skipped a beat. Chapter 243. Su Yingxue wants to test the medicine personally. Could it be Manager Chi? Or perhaps Qin Ming? If Su Yingxue had chosen Manager Chi to test the medicine, Manager Chi would have no complaints whatsoever. "Miss, Dr. Qin and his apprentice are innocent. This medicine, let me try." Manager Chi sighed. "Who said I wanted you to test the medicine?" Su Yingxue chuckled and took the medicine out. In the hall, Qin Ming and his apprentice saw the poisonous concoction in Su Yingxue's hand. Qin Ming relied on his understanding of pharmacology. He speculated, "This medicine is extremely poisonous. If used as a counterpoison, it might be effective, but it's only a possibility. It could also be ineffective and cause people to die. Today, in front of all of you, I concocted this antidote and needed someone to test it. However, one guarantee that the person to test it is definitely not one of you." Su Yingxue's smile was exceptionally reassuring. Manager Chi and Qin Ming were both puzzled. "Not us?" But the clinic was sealed off, and no one could enter or leave. "Whom do Miss intend to find for the test?" Su Yingxue smiled faintly. "If we can't get out of the clinic, isn't there still me?" "You, miss?" Manager Chi and Qin Ming said in unison. Then, they shook their heads like rattled drums. "No, no. How can we let Miss test the medicine? Why don't you let me try?" "Miss, you must not put yourself in danger. Your status is so noble. If something happens to you, how will the medical center explain it to the Marquis Mana?" Manager Chi and Qin Ming stomped their feet anxiously. Manager Chi even wanted to reach out to snatch the bowl of medicine, but Su Yingxue quickly took it away. "I'm telling you this not to ask for your opinion, but to order you. I need one of you to infect me with the deadly plague, and then I'll personally test the medicine." Su Yingxue asserted domineering and left no room for objections. However, the moment she said that, both Manager Chi and Qin Ming retreated far away from her. The 2 apprentices avoided her as much as they could. Manager Chi vehemently shook his head. "Miss, one definitely can't do something that will harm you. It wasn't easy for you to not contract this disease, but now you want to contract this disease for the sake of testing the medicine. One won't agree to it even if you beat me to death." Qin Ming had always been serious, and at this moment, he was also messing around with Manager Chi. "I won't agree to this even if you beat me to death." Su Yingxue raised her eyebrows. "So, you're saying I have to knock you unconscious before you agree to infect me?" Miss. Manager Chi and Qin Ming's hearts broke down. They had no choice but to get infected, but Su Yingxue was unscathed. This was luck given by the heavens. How could they let her intentionally get infected for the sake of testing the medicine? Manager Chi refused to agree no matter what. He even shouted outside, "Your Highness, please take Miss away." Chuihan had been standing guard outside the door the entire time. When he heard the commotion, He immediately asked, "What happened?" "No, nothing." A trace of panic flashed across Su Yingshi's heart as she turned around and glared at Manager Qi. Manager Qi was quite innocent, but he didn't regret his decision at all. "Su Yingxue, if you don't tell the truth, they'll break the door now." Chu Yihan spoke with cold anger. "Your Highness, you can't. If the door is broken, the deadly plague will spread out and the entire Jiangdu city will be in jeopardy." Liang Ji knelt in front of Chu Yihan. Chu Yihan's brows were tightly furrowed as he shouted from outside the door, "Su Yingxue, what are you doing inside?" Su Yingshi's scalp went numb. With Chu Yihan's personality, he could break in. After all, her door was not as sturdy as the palace's door. Chu Yihan could break it open with one palm without using the Qingfeng sword. Chapter 244. Chu Yihan entered the medical center. She helplessly said, "Your Highness, you should know the meaning of the word a doctor's benevolence, right? What are you trying to say?" "I mean, as a doctor and the owner of Tongchang Medical Center, it's my responsibility when something like this happens. I have to be accountable for the medical center, and more importantly, for the patients. Get to the point." Chu Yihan interrupted her bluntly. Su Yingxue immediately lowered her voice. "I want to get infected and test the medicine myself." Su Yingxue thought that she would hear Chu Yihan's furious voice outside the door. He would scold her, stop her, and even immediately hear the sound of him breaking in. But there was silence outside. After a long time, Chu Yihan's deep and magnetic voice was heard. "Because doctors are benevolent. Do you have to do this?"
Yes.
Su Yingxue nodded seriously. No doctor would let a patient die in front of them. If she was willing to give up, Consort Xiang would already be dead. If she was willing to give up, she wouldn't be worthy of being her mother's daughter. "All right." Chu Yihan's voice was steady and reassuring. "Wait a moment. I still have something else to tell you." When Su Yingxue heard his words, she stood at the door and waited for the time for an incense stick to burn. Her mood gradually became anxious. She wanted to test the medicine as soon as possible and bring closure to this illness. Manager Qi stood behind Su Yingxue, was as anxious as a grasshopper in winter. Why doesn't His Highness persuade Miss? If the old master knew, she would definitely be sad. Qinming nodded. If their old master, Long Shuli, knew that Su Yingxue was using her body to test the medicine, she would definitely be heartbroken. But he knew that his old master wouldn't stop her. Because Long Shuli was the same as Su Yingxue, they were both the best doctors in the world. The benevolent heart of a doctor drove them both to put every patient's life before their own, striving to save them. Su Yingxue finally heard some commotion outside the door. A series of footsteps approached the door of the clinic. It wasn't just Chu Yihan. Before Su Yingxue could ask Chu Yihan what he was doing, the door of the clinic was broken open from the outside. Chu Yihan's handsome and upright figure appeared before Su Yingxue, who recoiled in shock. "Have you gone mad? How could he come in at this time like this?" Behind him, Liang Jin led soldiers, clad in thick clothes. His eyes revealed extreme concern. "Your Highness, do you really want to do this? You are the god of war for the people of the great Qing dynasty. How many people would be heartbroken if he risked his life?" Chu Yihan hadn't stepped into the clinic yet. Not far behind him, Emochi had already brought soldiers to kneel. "Master, please don't risk yourself. The great Qing dynasty needs you. 10 of thousands of soldiers cannot be without a commander." Emochi knelt on the ground and kowtowed until his forehead was broken. Chu Yihan turned a deaf ear to their pleas. After entering the clinic, he ordered Liang Jin, "Seal the door." Liang Jin saw that Chu Yihan was so determined, and he could only grit his teeth and order his subordinates, "Seal the door. No one is allowed to enter or leave before the epidemic is resolved." Soon, the door of the clinic was sealed. Su Yingxue looked at Chu Yihan, who had just walked in. Shock, worry, heartache, and countless other complicated emotions flooded her heart like seawater. She even muttered childishly, "Is it still useful to push you out now?" Chu Yihan shook his head. "Liang Jin has already sealed the door. He won't open the door until I tell him that the deadly plague has been cured." Su Yingxue lost control of her anger. Chui Han, how can you be so willful? If you disregard your life, countless people in the Great Qing dynasty still need you as their faith. They still need you to live well. Chapter 245. Chu Yihan tested the medicine for her. Chu Yihan found her quite adorable with the face mask on. He ruffled her hair and said, "But I only live for myself." You. This statement forced Su Yingshu's tears back. She huffed coldly at Chu Yihan. "It's useless even if you come in. You're not a doctor and don't know how to treat illnesses. But one can help you test the medicine." Chu Yihan's warm breath brushed against her ear, making her ear tingle. Su Yingshu's heart was instantly set ablaze. Before she could react, Chu Yihan had sealed her acupuncture points, and she stood rooted to the ground, unable to move. "Chu Yihan, what are you doing? Let me go." Su Yingxue shouted desperately. Chu Yihan directly lifted her and asked Manager Qi, "Are there any clean places?" "The third floor is Miss Room. Your Highness can arrange for Miss to stay there," Manager Qi told Chu Yihan considerately. Chu Yihan sent Su Yingxue to her room. Su Yingxue was placed on the bed. The only thing she could move was her mouth. She wanted to annoy Chu Yihan so that he could unseal her acupuncture points. Even if he had to throw her out, she would still have a chance to resist. However, Chu Yihan backhandedly pressed on her mute acupoint. Su Yingxue was speechless. "Your Highness, you don't care about martial virtue." The only thing Su Yingxue could move now was her eyes. Chu Yihan saw her eyes moving around and pinched her cheeks. "Do you still want me to strike your sleeping acupoint and make you fall asleep completely?" Su Yingshu's eyes darted around. She thought, "No, Your Highness." Keeping her sober, she always found a way to deal with Chu Yihan, making him leave. Chu Yihan lifted his robe and sat beside her. His eyes were as calm as water. "I'll test the medicine for you. You don't have to worry." Su Yingshu's eyes were bitter. How could she not be worried? He was a prince, the revered king. "If I let you test the medicine, it'll not be at ease." He gently caressed her smooth face, and his gaze was filled with deep affection that Su Yingxue couldn't understand for a moment. He wouldn't feel uneasy, but she would. If anything happened to him, she would never be able to feel at ease for the rest of her life. Chu Yihan saw her eyes reddening and tears were flowing from the corners of her eyes. He lowered his head and kissed the corner of her eyes. His voice was like a hot spring as he said, "Your personality is very similar to Saint Ruan's. Since you've thought of the method of fighting poison with poison, one believe that you're right. Therefore, they'll take on the opportunity to test the medicine." No, Su Yingxue wouldn't agree. Even if only her eyeballs could move, she had to stop him. "Chu Yihan, don't do this to her. She wasn't worth his life." "Little furball, even if I die, you're my only wife. I won't go back on my words." This was the only sentence that lingered in Su Yingshu's mind before she fell into a deep sleep. Chu Yihan closed the door to her room and walked downstairs. He extended his hand to Manager Qi and the others with a cold expression. "Let me infect with the deadly plague." "This?" Manager Qi shivered in fear. Qin Ming and the two apprentices retreated continuously. "Your Highness, you are the supreme ruler, commanding the three armies. This is not permissible. Do you intend to defy my orders?" Chu Yihan's eyes emitted a dangerous aura, and the atmosphere in the entire hall dropped, making everyone's breathing quicken. Manager Qi shook his head. "Your Highness, we didn't even allow Miss to test the medicine. How could you?" "I don't want to say it a second time." Chu Yihan remained calm and decisive. No one dared to disobey him. Chapter 246. Made great contributions no matter how afraid Manager Qi and the others were, they had to follow his orders and remove their masks to approach him. The disease spread rapidly. In less than half a day, Chu Yihan's body started to itch. When he scratched, pus appeared. When he started to vomit, Manager Qi held Su Yingshu's bowl of medicine in front of him. "Your Highness, no one knows the medicinal properties of this medicine. If you can't detoxify it after taking it, I trust her." Chu Yihan drank up the medicine with his head tilted back after he said these words. The people in the medical center not only admired Chu Yihan's courage, but also respected his determination. Su Yingxue slept for a long time, and her dreams were filled with nightmares. She called out in a hoarse voice, Chu Yihan, Chu Yihan, Chu Yihan. This madman, this foolish prince. He disregarded everything, broke in, knocked her out, and even helped her test the medicine. He was an unparalleled fool. Chu Yihan, Su Yingxue, seemed to have broken through the shackles of her body. She suddenly sat up on the bed and almost punched someone in the face. Her hand was grabbed by someone, and Chu Yihan's deep and sexy voice was heard. There's no other face in the entire Great Qing dynasty that's as good-looking as mine. Take a good look. Su Yingxue pinched herself hard. It hurts. It wasn't particularly painful, but Chu Yihan was really shameless. Your Highness, you're still alive? Or are we all dead? Su Yingxue looked at him in a daze. Chu Yihan's face darkened. You, as a doctor, how could you ask such a stupid question? That's right. She was a doctor. Senior. Oh no, a junior in experience. Su Yingxue grabbed Chu Yihan's wrist and checked his pulse. His pulse was stable and his body showed no abnormalities. She would never believe that she was just dreaming. Could it be that my medicine? Su Yingxue's eyes were filled with disbelief and also carried a hint of joy. Dr. Su, you've made a great contribution this time and cured the deadly plague. Have you thought about what rewards you want when you go to the court in the future? Chu Yihan smiled. It was like the wind in March, warming up one's heart. Tears of excitement welled up in Su Yingxue's eyes. She reached out and hugged Chu Yihan, her voice slightly hoarse. Your Highness, thank you. He trusted her so much. He had risked his life for her. There were still some scars on Chu Yihan's body, but the deadly plague had already been treated. As long as he applied ointment on these scars, they would heal in 2 to 3 days. When he recovered, the crisis in their medical center would be resolved. Su Yingxue brought him downstairs and saw that Manager Qi and Qin Ming were wearing masks, but the sores on their faces had all disappeared. Everyone exchanged smiles. They were all happy that they had survived a disaster. However, Su Yingxue still reminded them not to let their guard down. She ordered Manager Qi to retrieve all the mugwort, Angelica dihurica, and Astragalus membranaceus from the medicine warehouse. A portion of it was boiled into soup for daily consumption, and another part was powdered, mixed with lime, and sprinkled throughout every corner of the medical center. After 3 days of this regimen, everyone's bodies were clean and clear. Even Lai San, who was the most seriously ill at the beginning, could see his facial features clearly and had regained his complexion. He knelt on the ground and kowtowed to Su Yingxue. Living deity. A life-saving living deity. One will never harm anyone again. Never again. It's good that you know. Don't risk your life for ill-gotten gains. Su Yingxue warned him. She didn't need to know how Lai San would react. Right now, she wanted to discuss with Chu Yihan how to get Liang Jin to open the door and inform the people outside that she had developed a medicine that could cure the deadly plague. Chapter 247. Chu Yihan broke the door. However, just as she turned around to leave, she choked on a strong smell of smoke. This is what was going on. Chu Yihan. The front hall was already filled with ashes. Su Yingxue couldn't see anything clearly. Even the backyard of the medical center was ablaze. Su Yingxue hurriedly instructed, Manager Qi, extinguish the fire. Cough, cough. Miss, this is Lord Liang's doing. He claims to have received the Emperor's decree and wants to burn everyone in our medical center to death. Manager Qi was also choked badly. He covered his face and directed a few servants to put out the fire. Su Yingxue's eyes were blurred by the thick smoke, and she couldn't see anything clearly. In the midst of the fire, someone grabbed her waist and her body flew into the air, breaking through the roof. Chu Yihan landed with her to the ground. Liang Jin held a torch and looked at Chu Yihan in shock. Your Highness, are you all right? The deadly plague has been cured. Who gave you the order to set the fire? Chu Yihan was furious. His wrath echoed for miles. Everyone threw down their weapons and knelt before him. Liang Jin replied truthfully, "Your Highness, it was the Emperor's order to burn down the clinic to prevent the spread of the deadly plague. He ordered the burning of the medical center, and the people inside were to be executed without mercy." Liang Jin was in a difficult position. Before he received the imperial edict, he had also petitioned the palace, stating that Chu Yihan had entered to test the medicine, and at the very least, they should wait for him to come out and see the results before making a decision. However, the emperor insisted on burning down the medical center. Not only did he want to burn down the medical center, but even the people who had returned home from the clinic, along with their families, were all arrested and prepared to be executed and buried alive. Imochi, extinguish the fire. With Chu Yihan's order, Imochi immediately led his troops to extinguish the fire. The troops in Liang Jin's hands were no match for Chu Yihan's soldiers. However, what made him even more anxious was the direction Chu Yihan had left in with Su Yingxue. They were heading toward the imperial palace. In the Hall of Diligent Government, Chu Jinling and Chu Qingye both knelt in front of Chu Mingyuan. Chu Qingye passionately argued that burning the medical center and killing people at this moment would cause widespread panic among the common people, eroding trust in the court. They should consider better alternatives. However, Chu Jinling said simply, "Father, Imperial Uncle is still inside. If you kill him, won't it leave an eternal infamy in the hearts of the people? The bordering countries are eyeing us covetously. They might also take this opportunity to invade our dynasty. Enough." Chu Mingyuan slammed the teacup down. The tea splashed on their faces. Chu Jinling and Chu Qingye knelt and kowtowed. "Father, please calm down." "Calm down? Are you trying to appease me? Don't think that I don't know. You've been bewitched by Su Yingxue and single-mindedly wanting to protect her. And you linger. You only care about your imperial uncle. What border countries are eyeing them covetously? Have you ever thought about how many people will die in Jiangdu City if the two of them don't die?" Chu Mingyuan's scolding made the two princes unable to lift their heads. Chu Jinling, who usually had little interaction with Chu Qingye, lowered his head and gave him a meaningful look. "Father likes you the most. You should beg father again." If imperial uncle and imperial aunt both died, how was he going to write his book? His future days would be so boring. He didn't want it. Chu Qingye glared at him. "If you have the ability, why don't you plead yourself?" Chu Jinling muttered to himself. If he was the prince who was regarded as the heir, why would he still be begging here? He would have already rushed into the medical center with his men and rescued his imperial uncle and imperial aunt. What was the point of all this effort? If the two of us die, imperial brother will be able to sit on the dragon throne without any worries? Chu Yihan's voice came from afar, like a meteorite crashing into the hall. Chapter 248. Chu Yihan is safe and sound. Everyone knelt and greeted. Ninth Prince. As they looked closer, they saw that he was accompanied by Su Yingxue. The expressions of the officials in the court were not too pleasant, but none of them dared to stand up in front of Chu Yihan. However, some of them were very aggrieved. For example, Su Dingheng. Did he just kneel to his daughter? How awkward. As Su Yingxue walked past him, he originally intended to stand up. However, he sensed Chu Yihan's sharp gaze sweep past him. His legs went limp, and his knees thudded heavily on the ground again. Father's leg really hurt. For the first time, Chu Mingyuan couldn't control his expression in front of the officials. "Chu Yihan, you are outrageous." If he had a weapon in his hand, he would definitely stab Chu Yihan with his sword. He was rebelling against his superiors. You disregarded your prestigious status, entered the epidemic zone alone, and now you actually dared to spread this disease to the imperial court. Do you want to destroy the great Qing dynasty? Chu Mingyuan reprimanded sternly. If it was said that he feared and respected Chu Yihan in the past, it was now a bone-deep hatred for him. He wanted nothing more than to immediately behead Chu Yihan and show him to the public. Chu Qingye quickly retreated to the side and covered his mouth and nose with his hand. "Imperial uncle, stop. If you take another step forward, I will order the imperial guards to show you no mercy." "What right do you have to speak to me like this?" Chu Yihan reprimanded his nephew and gave him a backhand slap, causing him to vomit blood. Chu Chengye felt a sharp pain in his heart. Imperial uncle, are you crazy? Chu Jinling didn't move away from Chu Yihan to maintain a distance. He was indeed shocked. Su Yingxue looked at his adorable head and stroked his hair. Your imperial uncle is fine. He's doing very well. That's good. Chu Jinling heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he was fine. Imperial uncle was infected with an illness and was cured? Chu Jinling was the first to react, and his eyes lit up. What? Cured? This is the deadly plague. Could it be that poison Dr. Saint Ruan has returned? He had resolved the calamity of the Jiangdu city? The officials discussed animatedly. They were no longer afraid of Chu Yihan approaching them. Emperor, it's a blessing for our great Qing dynasty that His Highness' body has recovered. Su Dingheng took the opportunity to flatter, and the civil officials followed suit. Chu Mingyuan's heartbeat slowed down as he looked at Chu Yihan suspiciously. Are you truly cured? Or are you here for revenge in the court? Does Imperial Brother think that everyone is like you, only capable of burning down the medical center? Chu Yihan's eyes were filled with contempt. He had no intention of respecting Chu Mingyuan as the emperor. Chu Mingyuan restrained his temper and waved his dragon robe. Summon the court physician. If you are not unharmed, one will impose the severest punishment on you. Chu Mingyuan, who had always cared for the people and the court officials, desperately hoped that Chu Yihan still had the deadly plague. It would give them a reason to have him executed cruelly, even if it meant paying a significant cost. The court physician arrived very quickly. He cowered and checked Chu Yihan's pulse. When he found no abnormalities, he relieved kowtowed to Chu Mingyuan. Reporting to the emperor, His Highness is unharmed. His Highness is unharmed. With no deadly plague on him, everyone in the hall of diligent government heaved a sigh of relief. The civil and military officials all knelt and shouted, God bless our great Qing dynasty. God bless the emperor. There was no joy in Chu Mingyuan's eyes. He could feel the hostility in Chu Yihan's gaze. Chu Yihan knew that the moment he entered the medical center, Chu Mingyuan had the intention to burn the medical center down. However, with the civil and military officials vehemently opposing, it wasn't until today that he could give the order to set the clinic on fire. Yet, he didn't expect. Chapter 249. Behind the conspiracy. Chu Yihan, are you really blessed by Father? This isn't a matter of God's blessing, but rather Su Yingxue developed the antidote. Instead of commendation, Imperial Brother set fire to her medical center. Don't you need to give her an explanation? Chu Yihan's voice was cold, yet authoritative, making it impossible for anyone to refute or dare to refute. Explanation? This illness was passed down from her medical center. Everything started because of her. I'm not investigating her faults, and she still wants commendation. Chu Mingyuan vented his anger at Su Yingxue. Su Yingxue knelt on the cold ground. Emperor, please forgive me. Indeed, this disease originated from my clinic, but it was not intentional for it to spread. The disease still exists, posing a threat not only to the great Qing dynasty, but also to the entire medical community. 1 a.m. willing to submit the detoxification formula to be archived by the Imperial Medical Academy to compensate for my mistake. Su Yingxue kowtowed devoutly. Her calmness and generosity won the admiration of many officials. Even Chu Chengye, who was helped to stand on the side, couldn't help but glance at her. He could see the awe-inspiring righteousness and courage of a woman in her. Chu Mingyuan thought for a moment and knew that Su Yingxue was smart. She left behind the antidote. This was far better than letting him punish her. It was much more beneficial to vent some anger. If the disease reappeared in the future, the imperial court wouldn't have to panic or fear. It would further contribute to stabilizing the people's hearts. Chu Mingyuan's eyes showed approval. Su Yingxue, you're so generous and decent, and you've worked hard to develop the antidote. I won't pursue your fault, but one won't reward you either. After all, this deadly plague originated in your medical center. Yes, I thank the emperor for not punishing me. Su Yingxue kowtowed. Chu Yuhan's eyes were filled with dissatisfaction. Su Yingxue quickly hugged his thigh. Your Highness, don't speak. Don't say anything. She was afraid that Chu Mingyuan would be angered to death. Chu Yihan remained silent, but he was also upset with her. When Chu Mingyuan announced the dispersal of the court, Su Dingheng appeared out of nowhere. With a humble face, he walked to Su Yingxue and said to Chu Yihan with awe, Your Highness, my daughter has worked hard in dealing with the disease these days. Could you allow me to bring her home for recuperation? Chu Yihan grabbed Su Yingxue's hand. His eyes clearly conveyed a refusal. However, Su Yingxue broke free from him and smiled gently. Thank you, Your Highness. I'll go home with my father for now. Su Yingxue's reaction was beyond Su Dingheng's expectations. Chu Yihan was comforted by her gaze and was persuaded to leave. Once he left, Su Dingheng dared to lift his sleeves and wipe the sweat off his forehead. He still wanted to throw a tantrum whenever he saw Su Yingxue, but because he was in the palace, he restrained himself. Do you know how much trouble you've caused? If Ninth Prince hadn't recovered, the entire Marquis Manor would have been implicated because of you. Father, it might not be the case. A dark glint flashed across Su Yingxue's eyes. This gaze suddenly made Su Dingheng uneasy. How did you know? Su Dingheng blurted out. Realizing what he had said, he quickly frowned. Don't talk nonsense. I haven't said anything yet. Father, why are you so nervous? You have the cure for the deadly plague, but you didn't give it to me. I don't need it anymore. Su Yingxue's laughter was very soft, but it suddenly smashed a hole through Su Dingheng's heart. Su Dingheng's lips turned pale. How did you know? He hadn't even had the chance to report this matter to the emperor. Chapter 250. Make peace with Su Dingheng. Su Jinxian had painstakingly found this prescription outside. He was afraid of getting infected by Su Yingxue's illness, so he dared not have someone deliver it directly to the medical center. Moreover, he coveted this immense credit and wanted to present it to Chu Mingyuan during the morning court to receive a reward. This prescription was enough to elevate his official rank by 2 levels. However, Chu Yihan suddenly brought Su Yingxue to the court. Liang Jin had reported that Chu Yihan was confirmed to be infected, but now that he was declared cured, and Su Yingxue publicly mentioned presenting the prescription to the Imperial Medical Academy, his prescription became useless. Although he didn't get a promotion, Su Yingxue gained face in the Imperial Court. In the future, leveraging her influence, he wouldn't be afraid of missing opportunities for advancement and wealth. But how did Su Yingxue get wind of this? How could she know about this? Father, don't be afraid. If one can settle the matter, I definitely won't make things difficult for you. Moreover, being valued by the emperor also adds luster to your face, doesn't it? Our Marquis Manor will benefit as well. Su Yingxue smiled obediently. Accustomed to her defiance, Su Dingheng was momentarily stunned. You don't blame me for not caring about you? Su Yingxue shook her head. Su Dingheng felt a twinge of guilt in his heart. Actually, it's not that I don't want to give you the prescription. I wanted the emperor to intervene and save you. Initially, he didn't want Su Yingxue's life. After all, she was his daughter, and it involved the honor and disgrace of the Marquis Manor. However, Lu Shulan advised him that bestowing grace from the emperor was giving face to the emperor, and it wouldn't hinder Su Yingxue's life. Su Yingxue smiled and said, Father's considerations weren't wrong. Fortunately, one inherited mother's medical skills, and this time, one haven't brought shame to our Marquis Manor. Let this matter rest. I need to return to the medical center for the aftermath. The medical center was burned, and its repair will take time. I want to recuperate in the manor for a while. Of course, you've worked hard to develop the antidote. I'll send some tonics to your courtyard and instruct the kitchen to prepare dinner for you. Su Dingheng and Su Yingxue walked together. The father-daughter appeared amiable, seen by others as a display of filial piety. When Su Yingxue returned to the medical center, the guards had already withdrawn, but the medical center had been burned to a pulp. Liang Jin specially waited in the medical center. When Su Yingxue returned, he conveyed Chu Mingyuan's decree. The emperor has decreed that Su Yingxue, for her achievements in overcoming the epidemic, is to be granted assistance from the Ministry of Works for the repair of the clinic. Compensation will be provided for those affected, and when the medical center is fully restored, an imperial plague will be bestowed. Su Yingxue knelt. Thank you for the emperor's grace. Rise, genius doctor. Even though he knew her identity, Liang Jin still couldn't help but address her as such. He had already been shocked by her too much. When he saw her now, the shock on his face had not dissipated. You're really the great fortune of the great Qing dynasty. 10 years ago, the poison doctor could cure the deadly plague, but he looked down on the imperial court. Now that you have also cured the deadly plague, you took the initiative to hand over the prescription to the Imperial Medical Academy. You have really contributed to the country. A small contribution, not worth mentioning. One will strive to make more contributions in the future. Su Yingxue smiled. Her words were filled with extraordinary confidence. It was a unique beauty that transcended her appearance. Liang Jin smiled in relief. He assured her that he would supervise the Ministry of Works to ensure a thorough renovation of her medical center, making it even more magnificent than before. Su Yingxue expressed her gratitude to him and went in to gather Manager Qi and the others. She granted them an extended leave and allowed them to go home on paid leave for rest and recuperation. Qin Ming and the apprentices expressed their gratitude, but Manager Qi shook his head. The branch in the west of the city has just opened. I can go there to help. Rest is unnecessary for me. Miss, you should return to the Marquis Manor and take a good rest for a few days. Chapter 251. Audit. Knowing that Manager Qi was a workaholic, Su Yingxue didn't force him. She returned to the study in the backyard and was troubled by the numerous medical books there. There was still so much she wanted to learn, and leaving them here might attract unwanted attention. After a brief consideration, she decided to move all the medical books and items in the study into Medicine King Valley. This way, no one could steal them, and only she could access them. However, this was not a small project. Little Ginseng floated around in her sea of consciousness, not offering a helping hand. When she complained of fatigue, it even criticized her. You're moving so slowly. You're really useless. You're so good at making sarcastic remarks. Won't you come and help? Su Yingxue rolled her eyes at it. Little Ginseng pouted proudly. Have you ever seen a ginseng moving things? You can let me broaden my horizons. I, as a ginseng, don't have the time for such trivial tasks. Hey, you dropped something. There's a black box in the corner. Little Ginseng reminded her kindly. Su Yingxue hadn't noticed yet, but in the corner of the bookshelf, there was a large box, dark and imposing. She tried to open it but found a lock on the box that was completely different from the usual locks they used. It had no keyhole, only a string of symbols she couldn't understand, and it could be rotated. She tried to turn the lock, but no matter what she did, she couldn't unlock it. Little Ginseng saw that she was sweating profusely and that the box was still intact. It waved its whisker and said, "This thing doesn't belong here." Doesn't belong here? Su Yingxue rubbed this special lock and raised her eyebrows. Little Ginseng's tone became serious. One haven't seen this thing in thousands of years. It definitely doesn't belong here. You better keep it. Su Yingxue threw the box into the Medicine King Valley. However, since the box couldn't be opened, she didn't pay much attention to it. She didn't expect that when the box was opened, it would unveil a whole new world in her life. Su Yingxue rushed back to the Marquis Manor after she was done with her work. Su Dingheng brought Su Yuro to the flower hall and waited for her for a long time. The rare occasion of the 3 family members sitting together for a meal. As soon as Su Yingxue sat down, Su Dingheng picked up a piece of meat for her. You've worked hard these days. Eat more. It's not good to lose weight from hunger. Yes, thank you, father. Su Yingxue was unusually obedient. She glanced at Su Yuro across from her, and the look in her eyes seemed like she wanted to devour her. She was such a disappointment. Su Yuro and her mother's plan had failed to kill her. Su Yingxue enjoyed the meal, but Su Yuro wore a stern face. Even Su Dingheng looked displeased as he glanced at her. Ruer, Your sister's favorite dishes are with you. Hurry up and serve some to her. Su Yuro quickly smiled. Yes, father. Sister risked her life and made a great contribution. She should eat more. Su Yingxue put down her chopsticks and said with a smile, Thank you. I'm full. She got up and said that she wanted to go back to rest. Su Dingheng didn't stop her. Su Yingxue pretended to mention it unintentionally. Father, have you paid attention to the account books of the few shops in your hands recently? Check if the income and money are in order. Su Dingheng was stunned. Why bring this up all of a sudden? He trusted Lu Shulan, and he had entrusted her with the account books and money. It had been a long since he last checked. This time, my medical center was burned down, and some of the account books were damaged. As one went through them, I found several mistakes. I thought of reminding father. Su Yingxue's eyes were pure as she left after saying that. Su Dingheng thought that she was just giving a well-intentioned reminder and planned to check with Lu Shulan later that night. Chapter 252. Like him so much when Su Yuro heard this, her brows furrowed tightly. What does Su Yingxue know? She mumbled and quietly left the manor after dinner to sneak to her mother's place. In Su Yingxue's courtyard, Zhilan assisted her in bathing and changing. While she appeared composed outside, she couldn't help but complain in front of Su Yingxue. Marquis is only polite to Miss because Miss has achieved something. Before that, when Miss was trapped in the medical center, we were worried to death, but Master sealed off our courtyard. He said if Miss couldn't return, he would hand over all of us, the servants, for execution. Su Yingxue had already expected Zhilan to say this. You've all worked hard during this time. Miss, how can this be considered hard? We, as servants, don't seek much. We only hope to serve Master well. Marquis Hart had long been outside. Miss, you still care so much about Marquis. Who said I care about him? Su Yingxue's lips curved into a smile. The bathroom was filled with mist. Her unparalleled beauty seemed ethereal in the mist, like a dream. Miss, didn't you remind Master to check the accounts? Zhilan was puzzled. If he doesn't check the accounts, how would he know how much money Lu Shulan used, collaborating with Silver Moon Pavilion, and creating such a deadly plague to harm me? Su Yingxue flickered the water droplets on her fingertips, and a hint of sharpness appeared in her watery eyes. Zhilan was greatly shocked when she heard this. She was about to shout out indignantly, but seeing that Su Yingxue was so calm, she thought about it and said in a low voice, Miss, you've considered everything thoroughly. Su Yingxue stretched out her hand from the bathtub and pinched Xilan's moist face. My little maid, when did you become so composed? In the past, she loved to shout. Zhilan felt a little embarrassed. Old Madame Zhang has been talking to me a lot these days, imparting some principles. As attendants close to Miss, we must be more composed so as not to drag Miss down. Shu Yin often comes to convey the eldest young master's instructions. In everything, one must not panic and must be as calm as Miss in times of crisis to be a useful, loyal servant. That brat Shu Yin, could it be that he's using brother's name to bully you? Su Yingxue tilted her head and looked a little cute. Zhilan blushed. No, he was very good. Miss, don't worry about me. Well, since you like him so much, one won't worry them. Su Yingxue patted her head. Xilan's face flushed red, but she dared not talk back to her. Su Yingxue came out of the shower, and there was a pervasive sense of killing intent in the room. When Zhilan saw Ziwei, she immediately protected Su Yingxue. This is Miss Boudoir. As a grown man, you should be careful. Don't come in often. If people find out, how will Miss get married in the future? Ziwei's eyes narrowed. Obviously, after so many years as an assassin, he didn't understand these things. He turned around and let Su Yingxue enter the inner room to change her clothes. Su Yingxue called out to him, and he slowly turned around. He lowered his head and said hoarsely, I'm sorry. It's fine. There's no need to be constrained by these things in the future. After Su Yingxue sat up, she poured a cup of tea for Ziwei and gestured for him to sit down. Ziwei remained motionless, held a knife, and stood in place. He briefly described the situation in Yaoguang Garden. Your father left in anger. When Ziwei saw him return to the Marquis Manor, he came back to report to Su Yingxue. Su Yingxue chuckled. Knowing that a significant amount of silver is missing but not knowing where it went, my father has every reason to be angry. Chapter 253. Lu Shulan was infected. She harmed you? Ziwei's eyes flashed with a sudden hint of killing intent. No big deal. Tonight, we'll visit her. Su Yingxue brought Ziwei to Yaoguang Garden. Ziwei observed that Lu Shulan would drink a cup of honey water before she went to bed for beauty purposes. Su Yingxue brought a cup over and poured the honey water from Lu Shulan's cup into the cup she brought. Ziwei noticed that the cup she brought was heavily wrapped, and she didn't even touch the cup with her fingers. He asked mildly, why? Su Yingxue was lying on the beam with him. When she saw Lu Shulan drink the cup of honey water, she chuckled and said, that cup was used by Lai San. Lu Shulan collaborated with Silver Moon Pavilion to harm her. This cup of honey water was her small retaliation against Lu Shulan. As for Silver Moon Pavilion, she instructed Ziwei to keep watch for a few days and bring her here when people from Silver Moon Pavilion arrived at Yaoguang Garden. In less than 2 days, Ziwei told her, Hong Lian has appeared. Su Yingxue nodded. Let's go and meet her. She and Ziwei arrived at Yaoguang Garden. From the roof, they could clearly see the chaos inside. Su Yuro cried miserably in her room. Mother, how did you become like this? How did one get infected with this deadly plague? I'm scared. Su Yingxue's lips curled up. She squatted down and watched the people busy themselves for a long time before Hong Lian finally appeared. The moment she entered the room, the cries and screams inside ceased. Su Yingxue clicked her tongue and sighed. She's indeed the person who poisoned Lai San. She immediately cured the poison. Hong Lian had brought Saint Ruan's antidote for Lu Shulan. However, when she saw Lu Shulan's scarred face, she frowned. Could it be that you were careless and contracted the deadly plague? Lu Shulan shook her head vigorously. That's impossible. One didn't even handle the things you gave me. I handed them over to the servants. After Lai San got infected, I executed that servant and burned his body. I shouldn't get infected. Did you deliberately harm my mother? You took so much money from us and caused my mother to get sick. Su Yuro dared not get close. She hid behind the folding screen and cried out. A sudden murderous intent gathered in Hong Lian's eyes. Lu Shulan quickly tried to smooth things over. My daughter said it unintentionally. I hope that Pavilion Master will not take it to heart because of her young age. It's just that my illness is really strange. Pavilion Master, please forgive me. Hong Lian also knew that her illness was peculiar. She asked her to take out all the things she had used recently and even asked her to record all the people she had come into contact with. Among the people she had been in contact with, none were related to Su Yingxue's medical center. As for the things she had used, Hong Lian looked at the row of teacups and bowls in front of her and gently picked up a small cup with a handkerchief. Lu Shulan recognized it. This is the teacup I use every night for honey water. Hong Lian's eyes revealed a trace of disdain as she threw the cup in front of her. This is Su Yingxue's gift to you. When the inconspicuous porcelain cup rolled in front of Lu Shulan, the words Tongchang Medical Center were engraved on the bottom of the cup. Lu Shulan was shocked. Su Yingxue, she could actually change the cup she drank from. How terrifying was that? Mother, it's Su Yingxue who harmed you? This bitch. Let's go back and tell father to kill her. Su Yuro shouted angrily. Kill her? Hong Lian chuckled. Madam Lu, your daughter is vicious, but she's stupid and ignorant. Silver Moon Pavilion doesn't do business with stupid people. In the future, there's no need for you to come to the Silver Moon Pavilion. Chapter 254. Kneel and apologize. Lu Shulan dared not refute Hong Lian's words. Once she left, she quickly ordered someone to throw the cup out and burn it. Su Yuro continued to cry and fuss behind the folding screen. Mother, she insulted me. That bitch, Su Yingxue should be killed. Shut up. Hasn't the scolding awakened you? If this matter reaches your father's ears, he will be the first to kill both of us. Lu Shulan's slender nails dug into the flesh of her palm, and blood dripped down her palm. Su Yingxue was indeed clever and a formidable opponent. However, she had never expected that she wouldn't reveal the truth after finding out that it was her, causing her to contract this disease. Hong Lian's antidote was still brewing. At this moment, all the pustules on Lu Shulan's body had been scratched open, and yellow liquid and blood flowed all over her body. She looked at herself in the mirror, ugly, bald, and on the verge of collapse. Once Hong Lian left the Yaoguang garden, the assassins she brought with her surrounded her. In a dark alley, Su Yingxue and Ziwei appeared together. Su Yingxue smiled. Pavilion Master Hong Lian, with such formidable martial arts skills, why bring so many assassins? It seems you have made quite a few enemies. Hong Lian's crimson eyes narrowed slightly, emitting a burst of murderous intent. Su Yingxue, do you think that you have the right to boast in front of me just because you survived a great disaster? Her aura was strong, while Su Yingxue and Ziwei seemed frail. However, Su Yingxue showed no hint of fear throughout her body. Today, one not only want to boast in front of you, but also make you kowtow and apologize to me. What audacity! One think you're tired of living. Hong Lian was so angry that her hands trembled. She wished she could wave her hand and give the order to chop Su Yingxue into meat paste. The assassin beside her took a step forward, and Ziwei immediately protected Su Yingxue. Even though he remained silent, the intense killing intent emanating from his was enough to make the assassins around Hong Lian halt. Pavilion Master Hong Lian, one advise you to let the people around you leave. Otherwise, your subordinates will see your embarrassing appearance later. Su Yingxue raised her eyebrows as if she was taking a leisurely stroll. Hong Lian gritted her teeth. What right do you have? Because I know that Silver Moon Pavilion harbors the source of the deadly plague and has unleashed this harmful poison in Jiangdu City. Just this alone is already a violation of the alliance agreement between the Silver Moon Pavilion and the various countries. What a joke. Would my Silver Moon Pavilion be afraid of your threats? Hong Lian sneered. Of course, you're not afraid, but what about the Great Qing dynasty? His Highness, with tens of thousands of elite troops, will you be afraid? Once the Emperor learns that Silver Moon Pavilion has caused trouble in Jiangdu City, he will not tolerate it. If His Highness is ordered to intervene, do you think he will spare Silver Moon Pavilion? Su Yingxue raised her eyebrows, and her eyes were filled with a blatant threat. Su Yingxue, how dare you use His Highness to threaten me? Hong Lian's eyes glared fiercely. Didn't you threaten me with His Highness? If it wasn't for His Highness risking his life to test the medicine for me, what would Jiangdu City be like now? Do you think that if you manage to produce the cure for the deadly plague, the Emperor won't find out about your conspiracy and His Highness won't kill you? Su Yingxue's sonorous and powerful voice pierced Hong Lian's heart. This time, Su Yingxue truly had a hold over Hong Lian. It was fine if she brought disaster to other countries, but Jiangdu City was under the guardianship of Chu Yihan. If he learned about this matter, the relationship between Silver Moon Pavilion and him wouldn't save her position in his heart. Hong Lian gritted her teeth in hatred. Su Yingxue, what do you want? I told you to kneel and kowtow in apology. Chapter 255. The Pain of Piercing Bones. I told you to kneel and kowtow in apology. Su Yingxue's lips always carried a faint smile. The anger in Hong Lian's heart surged out. Su Yingxue, how you dare! She, Hong Lian, was the pavilion master of Silver Moon Pavilion. She was proud and even surpassed princesses and county princesses. Su Yingxue actually dared to make her kneel? Why wouldn't I dare? If you don't kneel, they'll bring Lu Shulan to the Emperor right now. There will definitely be a battle between the Great Qing dynasty and the Silver Moon Pavilion. The one leading the army to kill you will definitely be His Highness. You've admired His Highness for so long. Why don't you try dying under his sword? The moonlight shone on Su Yingxue's beautiful face, reflecting the coldness in her eyes. Her gaze was like an unsheathed sword, making people dare not look directly at her. Hong Lian's body trembled slightly. A thought flashed through her mind. Kill Su Yingxue. Now. Immediately. Right away. It's curfew time now. If you move against me, the city defense army is also His Highness' army. You can't kill me. Su Yingxue smiled and cut off the last trace of thought in Hong Lian's heart. The assassins around Hong Lian were trembling. They had been raised in the Silver Moon Pavilion for so long, and Hong Lian, ruthless and merciless, had never hesitated to kill or act. Although they could clearly sense the murderous intent emanating from Hong Lian, they never heard her order to attack. It wasn't until Hong Lian said in a deep voice, "All of you, get lost. Pavilion Master, get lost." Hong Lian sternly scolded, and the 19 assassins immediately disappeared without a trace. Hong Lian walked towards Su Yingxue, lowered her head, and knelt before her. The moment her knees touched the ground, the corners of Su Yingxue's mouth curled up slightly. "Don't you know how to apologize? Silver Moon Pavilion has acted inappropriately. One asked the eldest young miss of the Marquis Manor for forgiveness. Please don't hold it against Silver Moon Pavilion." Hong Lian lowered her head to hide the humiliation on her face. "All right," Su Yingxue agreed, but she didn't ask Hong Lian to stand up. She stood quietly for 15 minutes while Hong Lian knelt for 15 minutes. Only after Su Yingxue left with Ziwei did Hong Lian slowly stand up. Even after they turned down a corner, Su Yingxue could still sense the destructive killing intent of Hong Lian. Ziwei spoke solemnly. "Why? Are you asking me why I made Hong Lian kneel before me instead of directly informing the Emperor or His Highness?" Su Yingxue winked at Ziwei like a fairy. Ziwei's heart skipped a beat. He lowered his head and grunted hoarsely. "Hong Lian is Silver Moon Pavilion Master. It's not that easy to eliminate the Silver Moon Pavilion." All the previous attempts by various countries only resulted in mutual damage to Silver Moon Pavilion. The Emperor might not exterminate Silver Moon Pavilion, but His Highness would genuinely be angry. By probing Hong Lian this way, she had proven something. Silver Moon Pavilion might not fear the Emperor, but they fear His Highness. Likely, the relationship between His Highness and Silver Moon Pavilion is not simple. Therefore, Hong Lian, engaging in this business, must be doing it behind His Highness' back. If Chui Han knew about this, things wouldn't be solved by just kneeling before her. "You seem quite pleasant," Ziwei said with certainty. Su Yingxue didn't hide her smile at all. "Yes, Hong Lian is my enemy. She even set us up last time. Of course, I'm happy to make her suffer." Ziwei didn't think much of it. In the eyes of an assassin, if someone was an enemy, even if she could survive, she had to suffer significant harm. The battle between women is unlike that of men. Hong Lian is proud and arrogant. Even if she suffers physical injuries, she can recover easily. But damaging her pride, undermining her sharpness, can cripple her to the point where she can't lift her head. Chapter 256. Marquis Manor's stewardship. Making Hong Lian kneel before her tonight was akin to subjecting her to bone-piercing torture. The humiliation today would be etched in Hong Lian's memory for the rest of her life. Kill with precision. Use different methods for each person. Su Yingxue poked Ziwei's face as if she were teaching him. Ziwei didn't understand these intricacies. He would only brandish his saber and risk his life whenever Su Yingxue faced danger. However, Su Yingxue had tasted the sweetness. Hong Lian would prostrate herself before her, and the same fate awaited Lu Shulan and her daughter. In her previous life, she was treated like a fool, and those who humiliated her would pay a brutal price in this life. Lu Shulan and her daughter had taken the initiative to attack her so many times. As her medical center was closed for a break, she had the perfect opportunity to strike back at them. Su Yingxue refurbished her medical center, taking the time to rest, hone her medical skills, and rejuvenate her spirits. In order to see her, Su Hao also came back a few more times. Seeing that her relationship with Su Dingheng had improved, he was puzzled but refrained from asking questions. It wasn't until Su Yingxue brought it up. "Father, there's something I'd like to discuss with you." Su Dingheng put down the tea in his hand and looked at her seriously. What's the matter? Mother has passed away for many years, and there has been no mistress in the Marquis manor. You have to attend court and manage the household, which is truly busy. One feel a bit sorry for father. Su Yingshi's eyes were filled with sincerity. Su Dingheng was touched at first, until she continued, I've been idle recently. Why not let me take care of the household for you? It would also lighten your burden. There's no need for that. Su Dingheng looked a little uncomfortable. Su Yingxue already held a significant portion of shops, and most of the Marquis Manor's finances were under her control. If she took over the household affairs, wouldn't he, as the father, be sidelined? Su Dingheng would never allow himself to fall into such a situation. He coughed lightly. Cough. How can an unmarried girl like you manage the household? The affairs of the house are incredibly intricate and complicated. It is precisely because I haven't married yet that one want to learn. Otherwise, when one marry into my husband's family, it'll be the subject of ridicule. Our Marquis Manor would be blamed for not raising me properly. Su Yingxue looked aggrieved. Su Dingheng was speechless. He didn't want to relinquish power, but Su Yingshu's words were reasonable. Just when he felt relieved that Su Yingxue had been obedient for 2 days, she now seemed to be aiming to seize power. In Su Dingheng's eyes, his displeasure toward her returned. Su Yuro happened to arrive at this moment. When she heard this, she stepped forward to help Su Dingheng out of the predicament. Father, what sister said makes sense, but, as a daughter of the Marquis Manor, Ruer could also learn to manage the household and share the worries for father. Su Dingheng raised his head to look at her. Su Yuro was his beloved daughter, but she was still a little immature. Considering the mistakes she had made before, he was genuinely concerned about entrusting the authority of the Marquis Manor to her. He only sighed softly. You're younger than Yingxue. I'm afraid you won't be able to manage it well. Daddy, let me try. Mother has taught me since one was little. Ruer will not disappoint you. Su Yuro clung to his arm and acted coquettishly. When she mentioned her mother, she deliberately raised her eyebrows at Su Yingxue, mocking her for not having a mother's guidance. Su Yingxue didn't take it to heart at all. She quietly waited for Su Dingheng's decision. Su Dingheng was a selfish man to his bones. Other than Lu Shulan, whom he loved deeply, he harbored a sense of distrust even toward his own daughter, Su Yuro. Now, as she and Su Yingxue contended, he sternly remarked, All right, you two sisters might not be able to manage it well. Howard's military affairs are very busy. If he gets married, and we have there's a young madam in the Marquis Manor, it won't be too late for me to hand over the authority to her. Chapter 257. Su Yingxue prepared to close the door and beat the dog. Su Yingxue raised her eyebrows. Her father was indeed a sly fox among civil officials. He clearly knew that Su Hao liked Wu Jinyan and insisted on marrying her, and it was not so easy for him to marry Wu Jinyan to be the young madam of the Marquis Manor. His words were flawless and irrefutable. Su Yuro didn't get the right to be the butler, so she sat to the side indignantly. However, Su Yingxue continued, Why does my brother need to get married? If Marquis Manor needs a madam, father can either marry or take in someone. It's not impossible. Su Yuro looked at her in confusion. Su Hao shouted angrily on the spot, Sister, what are you talking about? Box novel. Their grandfather had decreed that to protect their mother, their father couldn't marry or rake concubines in his lifetime. Yet, she was suggesting that he marry again? Yingxue, do you mean what you're saying? Su Dingheng's eyes lit up. Of course it's true. Father, at your age, you should have someone to serve you. Su Yingshu's words were so sincere that even Su Yuro couldn't believe it and thought that she had gone crazy. Well then, I'll immediately send someone to propose marriage. Su Dingheng was overly happy and remembered that he still had the old master above him. He quickly took back his words. In this life, I've only had your mother as a wife. However, if one were to take a concubine, I'd long had someone in mind. Oh, Who is it? Su Yingshi's eyes were pure as she pretended not to know. It's Ruer's mother. She gave birth to Ruer and Jin Xian, but she never had a status. Now, only Ruer has returned to the Marquis Manor, and Jin Xian is still wandering outside. I can't bear it in my heart. Su Dingheng pounded his chest in pain. In that case, father should indeed give sister's mother a status. Su Yingxue smiled faintly. Su Yingxue, do you know what you're talking about? Su Hao stood up and stared at her with red eyes. Su Yingxue had an innocent look on her face. Su Hao rushed out angrily. Su Yingxue bowed slightly. If father needs my help in this matter, he'll definitely not reject it. He'll go persuade brother. Good, good, good. You're really a sensible and obedient child. Su Dingheng was overjoyed. He had wanted to marry Lu Shulan for so many years. Now that Su Yingxue had taken the initiative to propose it, she was so obedient that it was unbelievable. However, Su Yuris' eyes were filled with doubt. Father, is this not a trap set by sister? Are you really going to welcome mother into the manor? Nonsense. Ruer, you've really been spoiled by me. Chapter 258. Increasingly difficult to understand my sister, but if she doesn't enter the house, how can I close the door and beat the dog? Su Yingxue tilted her head. Su Hao looked at her in surprise. You deliberately let her enter the manor? Yes. Su Yingxue followed him back to Ling Shao Court. She didn't hide anything from Su Hao and told him about the deadly plague in the medical center and the matters related to Silver Moon Pavilion. What? That woman was so vicious. By doing this, you're inviting a wolf into the house. Su Hao punched the table. Su Yingxue consoled him. Brother, this is clearly a dog beating behind closed doors. Rather than letting her stay in Yaoguang Garden and plot against us, it would be better to let her stay in the Marquis Manor. Under my watchful eyes, this is our home. She's just an outsider woman who doesn't even deserve the status of a concubine. What can she use to threaten us? Box novel. Tom, didn't you ask father to take her as a concubine? Su Hao's eyes were filled with doubt. I did ask father to do this, but isn't it a different matter whether he can do it or not? Su Yingshi's black eyes turned around slyly. What other ideas are you hiding from me again? Su Hao flicked her nose. Now, he found it increasingly difficult to understand his sister. Su Yingxue kept Su Hao in suspense. Anyway, I can guarantee, brother, that regardless of whether it's a wife or a concubine, that woman called Lu Shulan is not qualified. She can only be a servant when she enters the Marquis Manor. She will even spit out all the assets that belong to mother that she embezzled in the past and return them to us. Su Hao felt that it was unbelievable. A woman who has such vicious thoughts and almost killed you is not easy to deal with. You have to be careful. Don't worry. If I'm not careful, there's still Sister Jin Yin. Brother doesn't trust me, but don't you trust her? Su Yingxue secretly teased Su Hao. Su Hao's face suddenly blushed. Of course she's cautious. If Wu Jinyin hadn't been so cautious, she would have married him in a daze. However, it was precisely because she was cautious that he understood that they both needed to work harder. He ultimately agreed with Su Yingxue, but he admonished her. If something like this happens in the future, don't hide it from me. It'll save you even if one have to risk my life. I won't allow anything to happen to you, understand? He patted her shoulder. The affection in his eyes made Su Yingxue extremely moved. In her previous life, her brother had died because of her, and she didn't have much time to enjoy the bond between siblings. However, it was different now. They would all live well. Su Dingheng very quickly began to prepare for the matter of taking in concubines. Their Marquis Manor had a deep root, and even if he, the Marquis, were to take in concubines, even if the old master wasn't around, he would still have to invite the elders of the clan to nod their heads and be witnesses. Originally, the elders of the clan were aligned with the old master. However, when they saw that Su Yingxue had nodded and agreed to help Su Dingheng personally, they couldn't openly object. Su Yingxue publicly proposed, Daddy taking a concubine is a significant matter. We should open the ancestral hall and seek the guidance of our ancestors. Once the ancestral hall is open for worship, we must bestow widespread benevolence. Since one can't assist Daddy in many ways, one boldly take on this responsibility. Su Dingheng was overjoyed and paid little attention to these details. Su Yingsha's understanding and wise words won the favor of the clan elders. He couldn't stop smiling. Very well. Truly, you are my excellent daughter. I entrust this matter to you. This is your responsibility as a legitimate daughter. That's right. Eldest young miss is the legitimate daughter of the Marquis Manor, should naturally handle it in this manner. Thank you for your praise, uncles and esteemed elders. Chapter 259. Su Dingheng took a concubine. Thank you for your praise, uncles and esteemed elders. Su Yingxue ingratiated herself with the eiders. During their conversations, she learned that some of them had physical inconveniences due to their age. She even provided them with prescriptions for tonics, which further endeared her to the clan elders. Outside the door, Su Yuro gritted her teeth so hard that they felt like they might shatter. The elders of the Su family all praised Su Yingxue, commending her grace and noble status as a legitimate daughter. But this was all praise for Su Yuro in the past. She was also a daughter of the Su family. Box novel. Come, miss, please bear with it. When our madam enters the manor, she will definitely teach eldest young miss a good lesson. She and eldest young master are both motherless children. How can they compare to you and second young master? Yuan Ruo advised from the side. Su Yuro looked at the triumphant Su Yingxue and gritted her teeth. Su Yingxue, wait until my mother enters the Marquis Manor, and you'll meet your end. Su Dingheng chose an auspicious day and set the marriage. He even sent an invitation to his colleagues and friends in the court to attend the Marquis Manor for a wedding banquet. Those who were at odds with him and looked down on him had all come this time after receiving the invitation. He even sent someone to deliver the invitation to the 9th prince's mansion. Little did Su Dingheng expect that Chu Yihan would also attend. Su Dingheng was dressed in wedding robes and was welcoming guests at the entrance. When he saw Chu Yihan, he went forward to welcome him with a radiant face. Your Highness, it is an honor for the Marquis Manor to have you here. Chu Yihan's face was as cold as ice. He nodded slightly at him and went straight into the manor. Su Dingheng thought that with Chu Yihan's arrival, he would at least show some courtesy and offer a word of blessing. However, Chu Yihan publicly ignored him like this. He felt instantly embarrassed. Liang Jin came up and patted his shoulder. Marquis, please don't take offense. His Highness has always been like this. Even if the Emperor wants to hear a pleasant word from His Highness, it's not that easy. He seemed to be consoling him, but there was a hint of mockery at the corner of his mouth. Su Dingheng followed the cue. Lord Liang is right. Welcome, Lord Liang. Please come in. Liang Jin also entered the manor. He had brought his wife with him today. Mrs. Liang had recovered from her illness and was eager to express her gratitude to Su Yingxue in person. Now that she had personally entered the Marquis Manor and saw Su Yingxue, she couldn't wait to walk over and hold her hand. Miss Su, genius Dr. Su. I've missed you for a long time. Helio, Mrs. Liang. Su Yingxue greeted her with a smile. Seeing that Mrs. Liang's complexion had improved, she took her pulse again. Mrs. Liang's body has recovered. You must have been very happy during this period. Your blood circulation has improved significantly. Mrs. Liang was surprised. Miss Su, you're really amazing. My husband has treated me very well during this period of time. Ever since one recovered from my illness, Madam. Liang Jin quickly pulled her back. Miss Su is still unmarried. We shouldn't discuss our private matters in front of her. Liang Jin found it funny and helpless. He had spoiled his wife. She had a lively personality, and sometimes she would talk too much. Mrs. Liang immediately covered her mouth. Oh, one forgot. Miss Su is still a young lady. She blinked and apologized. Miss Su, please don't take offense. They'll talk to you privately after you get married. Please sit, Mrs. Liang. Su Yingxue smiled awkwardly. She thought to herself that Mrs. Liang was indeed a girl spoiled by her husband. Su Yingxue, are you very happy today? Chu Yahan's cold voice was heard. Su Yingxue turned around and was a little surprised. Your Highness, you also honored us with your presence? I received the invitation, so why can't one come? Chu Yihan didn't receive a grand welcome from her and seemed a little displeased. Your Highness, please take a seat. Su Yingxue smiled obsequiously. Chu Yihan stepped forward and pinched her chin. He stared at her deeply. Are you sincerely agreeing to your father taking a concubine? If you are unwilling, I can. Chapter 260. The disturbance of entering the manor. What can your highness do? Are you planning to throw people out of the Marquis manor? Su Yingxue winked playfully, seemingly eager for Chu Yihan's response. I can do that, Chu Yihan told her with certainty. On the day the Marquis of Marshall South took a concubine, the ninth prince threw him and his concubine out of the Marquis manor. That scene must have been spectacular, and her father and Lu Shulan must have been in a sorry state. However, she would never do something that would tarnish Chu Yihan's reputation. So she bowed slightly. Thank you for your good intentions, Your Highness. However, one was the one who suggested this matter, so you don't have to worry about it. Box novel. Calm Chu Yihan looked at her intelligent eyes, which were flowing with a gem-like luster. No matter how he looked at it, she didn't look like someone who could be bullied. Instead, she looked like someone who was in control of the situation. Chu Yihan couldn't help but be curious about her intentions. Su Yingxue couldn't bear to hide it from him for too long, nor could she bear to let her brother watch for too long. When Lu Shulan's bridal sedan arrived at the entrance of the Marquis manor, she and Su Hao went out to welcome them. Su Dingheng gave Lu Shulan enough face. It was a 2-meter-wide sedan chair with 8 carriages. Although it was a concubine, the scene was not much smaller than a wife. Beside the bridal sedan, Su Jinxian, who hadn't shown up for days, stood in a dignified manner. He was dressed in a black robe with a complicated and exquisite pattern embroidered with gold and silver threads on his chest. The long fringe on his forehead covered half of his eyes, but it couldn't hide the gloomy expression in his narrow and thin eyes. He walked up to Su Dingheng, cupped his fists, and said in a clear voice, "Congratulations, father. You can finally reunite with mother and relieve the decades-long yearning." Su Dingheng patted his shoulder. Well said, Shinner. After so many years, one can finally bring you and your mother into the Marquis manor. His heart was filled with love for Lu Shulan and guilt for Su Jinxian. They were both his children. Su Hao and Su Yingxue were raised in luxury in the Marquis manor. Su Jinxian had never set foot in it. It was a knot in his heart for many years, and because of this, he cherished Lu Shulan even more. Su Yuro was overjoyed when she saw that her mother and brother could enter the manor. She glared at Su Yingxue and walked to Su Dingheng's side. She said delicately, "Father, quickly welcome mother into the manor." Su Dingheng was overjoyed, and only then did he remember. Quick, enter the manor. Su Yuro smiled smugly at Su Yingxue, who responded with a silent smile. Beside her, Su Hao's right hand was clenched into a fist, and his voice was cold and deep. A concubine cannot enter the manor from the main entrance. Did father forget even the most basic etiquette in his joy? Su Yingxue's lips curled up. If father forgets, someone will naturally remind him. Today, Lord Lin from the Ministry of Rites is also here. As soon as she finished speaking, a series of hurried footsteps came from the entrance of the manor. Su Dingheng was about to lift the sedan curtain when Lin Qin shouted, "Marquis Su, you can't." Lu Shulan had already stepped out of the sedan door with one foot, and Su Dingheng had already taken her hand. He raised his head and looked at Lin Qin strangely. "Lord Lin, what do you mean?" He had never offended Lin Qin. Was this person here to cause trouble? Lu Shulan had a bad premonition. She quietly lifted a corner of the veil and looked coldly at Su Yingxue at the door. Su Yingxue happened to look at her too and smiled at her. There was no sharpness in her eyes, but it inexplicably weighed on Lu Shulan's heart. The purer someone appeared on the surface, the deeper they hid, and the more difficult they were to deal with. Chapter 261. My concubine can't wear red. Lin Qin walked in front of Su Dingheng and said softly, Marquis Su, had you been blinded by the joyous occasion and forgotten the etiquette of our great Qing dynasty? This was the main entrance of the Marquis residence, and it was the center of attention. How could a concubine enter through the main entrance? Besides, how could this concubine be worthy of wearing red? Su Dingheng came to a sudden realization. He quickly let go of Lu Shulan's hand and backed away from the door of the sedan. He looked gratefully at Lin Qin. Thank you for your reminder, Lord Lin. Otherwise, it would have been extremely embarrassing. Marquis, why didn't you quickly get someone in the residence to prepare a set of clothes for Lady Lu to change into? If today's matter had spread, even if I hadn't said it, wouldn't there have been people who would have complained about Marquis in the Hall of Diligent Government tomorrow? Lin Qin deliberately made the matter sound more serious. He was in charge of the Ministry of Rights and was a third-rank official with a higher rank than Su Dingheng. Su Dingheng didn't suspect him and immediately waved his hand to order the servants. Men, quickly change into a wedding dress. It can't be red. Box novel. Calm, Marquis, this. We hadn't prepared anything. The butler was a little embarrassed. Which family would have prepared a second wedding dress for their wedding? And even if Marquis had forgotten that concubines couldn't wear red, did this married lady not know? Or did she think that she could enter the house just because she treated herself as the first wife? When Su Yuro heard Su Dingheng's words, she stomped her feet in anger. She tugged at Su Dingheng's sleeve and acted coquettishly. Father, Mother waited for you for so many years. How could you have treated her like this? If she couldn't enter through the main entrance, did she have to change her wedding dress on the street? This had been a great humiliation for the married woman. Su Jinxian had always been a man of few words, but he couldn't hold it in any longer. Father, it would have been fine if we hadn't entered through the main entrance. At that moment, I was afraid it would have been difficult to find a second wedding dress that wasn't red. Why didn't we let Mother enter the residence first? Su Dingheng had been in a difficult position. Lin Qin hadn't said anything else, but he had kept a stern expression as he stood at the side. The words etiquette cannot be overstepped seemed to have been written on his face. Su Dingheng had been like an ant on a hot pan. Chapter 262. Take the side door. Usually, when she put on such a pitiful look, Su Dingheng would do whatever she wanted. But now, not only did Su Dingheng not listen to her, he even sneered and ignored her. Su Yingxue lowered her head and laughed. If Su Yuro had not said those words, Su Dingheng would still have doted on her. However, her words today had cut off half of Su Dingheng's impression of a good daughter. A dignified and proper young miss of the Marquis manor would not have despised the red tape on such a grand occasion. Su Yingxue placed the wedding dress into the sedan. Before Lu Shulan could speak, she smiled and said, Aunt, please change into the wedding dress I prepared for you. Box novel. Calm. Lu Shulan would not act rashly. She smiled lightly, her voice as soft as a willow in March. Thank you for your trouble, eldest young Mississippi. I'm afraid that eldest young Miss was in such a difficult position today. Why should Aunt be afraid? You could even do such a thing to me in the Yaoguang garden. Wouldn't it be more convenient for you to harm me after entering the Marquis manor? Su Yingxue's laughter was filled with coldness. Lu Shulan was just pretending to be nice to her. She didn't expect Su Yingxue to be so straightforward. Lu Shulan stared at the wedding dress, and her tone turned cold. So, eldest young miss, you wanted to use this wedding dress to harm me? So what if I did? Could it be that Aunt had other choices now? Su Yingxue chuckled and turned around to leave the bridal sedan. She said in front of everyone, Aunt understood the big picture. She said she wanted to change her clothes immediately. Father, please send people to surround the bridal sedan and protect Aunt's innocence. Su Dingheng nodded repeatedly and commanded the bridal escort team. Quick, surround the bridal sedan. Not a single breath of wind is allowed to leak out. Half of the bridal procession were men. Su Dingheng did not expect that Su Jinxian would not allow them to peek at his mother. He chased the men away and blocked the door of the bridal sedan himself. He had the maidservants surround the bridal sedan. Su Yingxue slowly walked back to Su Hao's side, and Su Hao's expression finally eased up a little. Changing clothes on the street, even in a bridal sedan, won't be good if the news gets out. Su Yingxue nodded.
Yes.
Su Hao suddenly felt that Su Yingxue's plan was not any weaker than the military strategy he used on the battlefield. A gratified smile appeared on his handsome face. Lu Shulan changed her clothes in the bridal sedan and did not come out for a full hour. Many formalities had not been completed. Even Su Dingheng could not free himself to entertain the guests in the Marquis manner. He was originally overjoyed today, but at this moment, impatience appeared on his face. Shulan, hurry up, he urged. In the bridal sedan, Lu Shulan had just taken off her clothes. After being urged by him, she immediately panicked. She was not changing slowly, but she was checking Su Yingxue's clothes. She was afraid that the clothes were crudely made and that there would be traps that would embarrass her. She was also afraid that Su Yingxue had poisoned them and wanted to harm her. That was why she had taken so long. After an hour, she touched the wedding dress and did not dare to change until there was nothing strange about it. However, when she changed into her clothes, she felt a little awkward. This wedding dress was much wider than her original one. She stretched out her arms, and the sleeves were loose and folded into several layers of folds. It made her look fat and round. Su Dingheng was so anxious that he spun around on the spot. He could not control himself and was about to rush into the bridal sedan when Lin Qin coughed. Marquis Su, etiquette. Sigh. Su Dingheng sighed heavily. Lu Shulan finally changed her clothes and stepped out of the bridal sedan door again. Su Dingheng suddenly remembered, this is the main door. You can't enter from the main door. Let Jin Xin send you to the side door. The side door is open. Chapter 263. The side door is also blocked. Lu Shulan endured the intense shame in her heart and responded with a coy, yes, Marquis. Her obedient demeanor eased Su Dingheng's heart somewhat. He needed to witness Lu Shulan's entrance into the manor, so he accompanied her to the side door. The side door, originally large enough for a bridal sedan to enter, was now obstructed by a long queue. Su Dingheng widened his eyes. What's going on? Box novel. Calm in front of him, many people in ragged clothes were lining up to receive porridge and steamed buns. They were blocking the side door of the Marquis Manor tightly. Not only was it impossible to enter the bridal sedan, but it was also too crowded for people to pass through. Su Yuro, already filled with anger because Lu Shulan couldn't enter through the main entrance, rushed over and shouted, "You beggars, hurry up and get lost. Blocking the side door of our manor, do you want to die?" The beggars who had originally been queuing up to receive relief now turned their collective gaze towards Su Yuro. The master of the Marquis Manor has shown kindness by providing us with porridge. What right do you have to make us leave? She's dressed in such flashy clothes. One can tell at a glance that she's no good. Spit on her. Spit on her. The beggars, having gone without food for some time, now had a chance to receive food. Those who prevented them from begging for food were now their objects of disdain, and they began spitting at Su Yuro. Su Yuro's clothes were stained with the beggar's saliva. She was so angry that she cried out, "Ah, you dirty and ugly people! I'm going to kill you. Little brother, quickly, kill them." Su Jingshuan's expression darkened, and he immediately ordered the palace guards to arrest the beggar who had spat at Su Yuro. The beggars immediately panicked. What are you doing? This is the Marquis of Marshall South's porridge stall, the Su family's favor for ancestral worship. You can't deprive us of our food. I'm letting you eat. Go to hell. Su Yuro stepped forward and kicked one of the beggars, her gaze extremely vicious. When Su Jingshuan's palace guards were about to kill him, Su Dingheng suddenly shouted angrily, "No?" He rushed to the side door and looked at the people serving the porridge. They were all from the Marquis Manor. He suddenly remembered that Su Yingxue had told him earlier that when the ancestral hall was opened, they were supposed to show kindness. If Su Jinxian killed someone, wouldn't that be a slap in the face? Hold on. Stop. Su Dingheng looked unhappily at Su Yuro and her brother. Su Yingxue immediately stood up, feeling guilty in her heart. Father, one was thoughtless. Our ancestors taught us that once we open the ancestral hall, we must help the people. I placed the porridge stall at the side door, blocking Aunt's path into the manor. It's my fault. As she spoke, she was about to kneel and apologize. Su Hao pulled her up with a stern face. Father, what's wrong with sister following the teachings of our ancestors? Su Dingheng was flustered and helpless. Yingxue indeed followed our ancestors' instructions, but this door is blocked. How can Shulan get in? Yingxue, quickly get these people to move away and make room at the entrance. He was anxious to carry Lu Shulan into the house. Su Yingxue looked hesitant. Father, we've already set up the porridge stall. If we remove it now and say that we're not going to give out porridge, we'll be breaking our promise to the people. That's right. On what grounds can you remove it? You promised to give us porridge. You can't take away our food. You can't. No. I'm still in line and haven't received any food. A group of beggars immediately stood at the entrance of the manor, guarding the porridge stall. Su Yuro was so angry that she wanted to kill someone. You bunch of lowlifes, why don't you take a look at what kind of livestock you are? Do you think you are worthy of asking for food at the entrance of our Marquis Manor? Don't block my mother's way. Chapter 264. Kneel down and apologize, Miss Su. You went too far with your words. They were people, not livestock. Such humiliating remarks, how could they come from a young miss of the Marquis Manor? Liang Jin and his wife hurried over. These guests had been waiting in the manor for quite some time, but they hadn't seen the host. They came to see what was happening and happened to hear Su Yuris' malicious words. Mrs. Liang had a gentle disposition, but when she heard Su Yuris' words, she too displayed a look of disgust. A woman like this, how can she be fit to be the Marquis Manor's young miss? The eldest young miss, adhering strictly to etiquette, opened the ancestral hall to honor her ancestors and set up a porridge stall to help the commoners. Such kindness was now being trampled upon like this. It's truly excessive. Behind her, several official wives shared her viewpoint. We initially thought the Marquis Manor's eldest young miss was arrogant and domineering, but we didn't realize she had such a sense of propriety. Box novel. This second young miss used to pretend to be gentle and delicate, obedient and clever. Who would have thought she was so malicious? In my opinion, Marquis Su's choice of concubines doesn't seem to be very virtuous. Otherwise, how could he have raised such a malicious daughter? When Su Yuro heard their insults, she wished she could silence them. Lu Shulan's voice came from the bridal sedan. Ruer, you're being too thoughtless. Even if she's intentionally making things difficult for us, we must obey her orders. Kneel and apologize to her immediately. Mother, I want. Su Yuro refused, being delicate in her manner. Kneel. Lu Shulan scolded sternly. Although Su Yuro was somewhat delicate, she had always heeded Lu Shulan's words. She also understood that the current situation was unfavorable for the mother and daughter. Kneeling and apologizing was necessary to salvage some of their reputation in front of everyone. But she was unwilling. It was clear that Su Yingxue had set them up, yet she was required to kneel to her. This was unfair. She reluctantly knelt, but Su Yingxue supported her. Sister, what are you doing? If the wives of the officials see this, they might think I'm mistreating you. Lu Shulan wanted to turn this situation around, but Su Yingxue refused. Su Yingxue played the role of a loving sister and suggested even more considerately, Father, Aunt must enter the residence. Why don't we dismantle this porridge stall for now and reopen it after Anne enters? Her words struck a chord with Su Dingheng, who had been experiencing a headache. Now that Su Yingxue had spoken up about her actions, it didn't embarrass him. However, Lin Qin, standing behind him, cleared his throat loudly. Lin Qin stood beside him, resembling a large character for courtesy. Su Dingheng's headache returned, but Lin Qin's presence reminded him that his official position and reputation were more important. Su Dingheng impatiently waved his sleeve. Fine, let's use another side door for entry. We'll continue serving porridge here. Father, how can mother endure this? Su Jinxian clenched his fists, feeling indignant. He gave Su Yingxue a fierce glare. This woman didn't want his mother to enter the residence at all. She was deliberately humiliating her. If you continue making a scene, you won't enter the Marquis Manor. Su Dingheng was growing increasingly exasperated. More and more guests gathered at the side door, all of them officials of the imperial court. Su Dingheng was someone who cared deeply about his image and reputation. His enthusiasm for marrying Lu Shulan had long been ruined by these events. He gestured. Jin Xian, escort your mother in through another side door. I'll head to the front hall to entertain the guests. With that, he turned around and smiled at Lin Qin and Liang Jin. Lord Lin, Lord Liang, let's proceed to the front hall. Chapter 265. Lady Lu is unable to enter the residence. Lin Qin and Liang Jin nodded and followed Su Dingheng to the main entrance, returning to the front hall. Su Yingxue looked at the few remaining people surrounding the bridal sedan and asked Su Jinxian out of kindness, "Second brother, did you want me to accompany you from the side door?" No need. Su Jingxuan's expression had darkened. Su Yuro had gritted her teeth, saying, Su Yingxue, who needed your fake kindness? Get lost. Before Su Yuro could finish her insulting words, Su Hao stepped forward and stood beside Su Yingxue. His aura was awe-inspiring, and his entire person resembled a cold knife. Su Yuro had been so frightened that she trembled and swallowed the rest of her words. Box novel. Calm, since my younger brother and sister didn't need me and brother to accompany them, we went to the front hall. After all, there were still many distinguished guests waiting for us to entertain. Su Yingxue smiled and stabbed a knife into the hearts of the siblings. Her words had a deeper meaning. Su Yuro and her brother weren't stupid, so they understood. Su Yingxue was saying that only the two of them born to a legitimate wife were qualified to sit in the main seat. The two of them born to a concubine were only qualified to carry a bridal sedan and walk around the side door. What made them even angrier were the 3 side doors of the Marquis Manor. They had gone around each side door, but they weren't allowed to enter. When Su Hao returned to the front hall, he thought, could Lady Lu still enter the Marquis Manor today? Su Yingxue had flipped her hair. Of course she could. Today, she was father's concubine. If she didn't enter the Marquis Manor, wouldn't it become the laughingstock of the entire Jiangdu? Eldest young miss, you knew how to joke. At this moment, Lady Lu was already the laughingstock of the entire Jiangdu city. Changing her wedding dress in the middle of the street, the main entrance wasn't allowed, and the side doors weren't allowed. It had been almost an hour, but her bridal sedan still hadn't been able to enter. Just now, when I passed by, I heard several madams laughing at her. Shu Yin muttered beside Su Hao. I said she could enter the Marquis Manor, but I didn't say her bridal sedan could enter the Marquis Manor. Su Yingxue's lips curled into a cold smile. The other 2 side doors of the Marquis Manor also had porridge stalls? Su Hao had looked over without surprise. Su Yingxue had looked at him seriously. Of course. Could it be that the other 2 side doors weren't the Marquis Manor's doors? Su Hao, combining Su Yingxue's words, had thought for a moment. Then there was only one corner door left at the woodshed. Su Yingxue blinked her eyes like a ghost. Brother, do you still remember when one sneaked out to play when I was young? You were afraid that I would get lost, so you often followed me? You. Suhao poked her forehead. Her mischievousness had been beyond one's imagination. Suhao had originally been joking with Su Yingxue when he suddenly sensed two cold gazes behind him. He had turned around abruptly, but he hadn't noticed anything. Chu Yihan had retracted his gaze, but his heart had been filled with displeasure. The distance between Su Hao and Su Yingxue had been too close. Your Highness, had Lady Lu gone through 3 side doors, but they had all been blocked. They had all been porridge stalls, so she couldn't enter at all. There had only been a corner door at the Marquis Manor's woodshed, so the bridal sedan couldn't be carried in. Tell me, wasn't this eldest Miss Su good at torturing people? Imochi had been beside Chu Yihan, talking nonstop. From the very beginning, he had been staring at the entrance of the Marquis Manor and had been telling Chu Yihan everything. However, Chu Yihan hadn't been listening. His gaze had been fixed on Su Yingxue the entire time. She had treated guests well and had been humble and polite. She had been very worthy of the identity of the Marquis' legitimate daughter. Chu Yihan's mind had been filled with the images of Su Yingxue that he had seen all these years. Chapter 266. Su Yingxue understood too quickly. She had been bold when she was young, and she had been domineering when she grew up. This had been the first time he had seen her so educated. His little dumpling seemed to have many faces, but thinking about it, no matter what she looked like, he had liked her very much. As he had thought about it, a touch of gentleness had entered his eyes, and even the corners of his mouth had curled up unconsciously. Imochi had been thirsty from talking, but Chu Yihan hadn't given him any reaction. However, he had seen as if he had seen a ghost that Your Highness had been smiling. Box novel. Come, oh my God. Just how gentle had Your Highness been? How could he have laughed on his own? In the past few years, Chu Yihan had always frowned, and his expression had been icy cold when he had thought about things. Imochi had looked at Su Yingxue with admiration. This eldest young miss had been magical. Your Highness had been poisoned quite badly. Other than Lu Shulin's interlude, Su Dingheng had still been very proud today. Many officials in the court had come to congratulate him and even praised him for having a pair of good children. Su Hao had been a young general, and Su Yingxue's medical skills had been outstanding. It had been simply a blessing that other families could not hope for. Su Dingheng's face had been flushed red from drinking. My colleagues, you flattered me. One didn't deserve it. I didn't deserve it. Ha ha ha. He had drunk to his heart's content with everyone. Su Yingxue had also been the one who had sent the guests off. When she had sent Liang Jin and his wife away, she had even said a few words to Mrs. Liang. When Mrs. Liang had left, her little face had been red. Chu Yihan had stood at the entrance of the Marquis Manor and had seen that Lin Qin had also exchanged a few words with Su Yingxue. When Su Yingxue had hopped in front of him, Chu Yihan had pinched her face. I vaguely remembered that Lin Qin hadn't gotten along with you in Upper Forest Park. Your Highness must have remembered wrongly? Su Yingxue's face had been pinched, and the sound she had made had been strangely cute. Chu Yihan had raised his eyebrows slightly and had increased his grip. Cough. I observed that Lord Lin had some hidden illness and had taken the initiative to send him a few medicines a few days ago. Su Yingxue had rolled her eyes. All right. She had known that she couldn't hide it from Chu Yihan. Chu Yihan had let go of her face and had pinched her nose. Cunning. This is so-called clever. Your Highness, don't mix up these two words. Su Yingxue had pouted and had argued. She had put on makeup today, and her lips hadn't been as pink as usual. Instead, they had a seductive blush. Chu Yihan's throat moved as he held the back of her head and leaned over to kiss her. Su Yingxue had been caught off guard and had fallen into his arms. The man's body had been like a furnace. The spring night had been slightly cold, and the night wind had blown from behind. Su Yingxue had immediately experienced the feeling of ice and fire. Oh, Your Highness, you're not allowed to speak, or else one won't be able to bear it. Chu Yihan's words had suddenly triggered a certain nerve in Su Yingxue. She had seemed to have understood what Chu Yihan had meant when he had said he couldn't bear it. Fear had risen in her heart, and she had quickly pushed him away. She had shouted in shock, "Your Highness, hold it in. Otherwise, she would lose her innocence." Chu Yihan had just been trying to scare her and hadn't had any intention of doing anything to her. However, she had looked at him with such understanding eyes that he had been at a loss. An awkwardness had spread between the two of them. Su Yingxue had bitten her tongue and had suppressed the blush that had crawled up half of her face. She had said in a muffled voice, "Farewell, Your Highness." She had run away after saying that. Her heart had been filled with 100,000 curses. It had been too embarrassing. How could she know so much? Su Yingxue, one gave your father a gift. Thank you, Your Highness. Su Yingxue hadn't heard him clearly and had run back to her courtyard. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.